You have been told that you will get rid of your stress, solve all your problems, and have more time to clear your mind. But if that is true, why do your thoughts still race at night? Why does it feel so loud in your head, even when there is no sound? Why does peace seem so far away, even though everything seems to be fine? The truth is that you can't achieve clear thinking by controlling what's going on around you. It comes from knowing yourself and your world. That's the plan Buddhism follows. Its teachings have helped monks, teachers, and seekers for more than 2,500 years to understand the world, tune out the noise, and find peace amid the chaos. Not by running away from life, but by giving it your full attention. They didn't fight to find peace. They discovered it, and so will you tonight. As you listen, something within you will change. Thoughts that were stuck will begin to move. Feelings that were too strong will become weaker. Between each breath, there will be a moment when you feel clear. Not the clarity that comes from knowing all the answers, but the clarity that comes from never needing to know the answers again. It's more than just noise to help you fall asleep. It's a great way to find yourself again. A quiet time to remember, a letting go. Close your eyes, let go of today, and get ready to fall asleep to the best lessons of Buddhism to free your mind. The fog is clearing. Let's begin. The fog clears and you begin to feel comfortable in this soft place. It's time to start the first lesson. Not with force, not with hard work, but with an honest, quiet look inward. Is this what you have been searching for? You don't have to earn it. You have simply hidden it with noise, control, and resistance, layer upon layer. And tonight, that ends. Tonight, we will discover what has always been there, beneath all the noise. Strength is not something that is taught in school. It is not loud. It is not hostile. It does not shout or push. It does not try to take over a place or push itself forward. This strength moves slowly. It really listens, and like a light, it brings peace. This is the strength that Buddhism talks about. This is how strong the gentle fighter is. Thoughts are not what this fighter fights against. He does not fight against feelings. He does not fight with life. Instead, this fighter just watches, observes, connects with what is, not to control it, but to understand it. And when you understand something, you gain clarity. When something goes wrong, the world teaches people to pull themselves together. Tense your shoulders, clench your hands, think more, fix it, make it happen, figure it out. No one ever told you that clarity doesn't come from stress, but from space. It doesn't come from controlling the moment. It comes from being in the moment. Be quiet enough to see through the storm instead of trying to defeat it. Buddhism does not say that you should turn your mind into a machine to become clear. Instead, it says that you should become the silent observer behind the mind. Taking a step back from your ideas, feelings, and need for answers should help you understand that none of these things define you. You are not the storm. You are the sky through which it passes. The mind usually does something every time a thought arises. It picks it up, chases it, and feeds it. A single thought can trigger a chain of events that turns a minor concern into a sleepless night. What if you hadn't done what he said? What if you hadn't responded, but just noticed? That is the art of the gentle warrior. Not reacting without understanding. Not suppressing or giving in, but simply seeing. And the first thing you have to do is stop trying to control what you think. Just look at it. Don't fight the thought that says you're not doing enough. Don't believe it either. Watch how quickly it passes, like a leaf on the water. When worry rises in your chest, don't try to hide it or explain it away. Feel it fully. Allow it to pass. You have to fight it to make it stay. Try to let go, not with your head, but with your heart, said Buddhist teacher Ajahn Chah. The gentle fighter does just that. He lets go out of wisdom, not because he wants to avoid something. He doesn't try to avoid feeling uncomfortable. He faces the discomfort, understands it, and lets it pass without it becoming a failure for him. Once things calm down, the fog begins to clear. This path doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a perfect version of yourself to get started. You have to stop fighting what you know. Accept how you feel right now, no matter what it is. Let it happen. Stick with it. Clear thinking is not synonymous with starting over. It is an open and honest acceptance of what is, without wanting it to be something else. Therein lies the paradox. The more you try to make things clear, the more unclear they become. It's like stirring water to make it clear. While you try to control your experience, the mud will settle as soon as you stop moving. Then the water will become clear again on its own. Being weak does not mean not putting up a fight. When your thoughts are racing, that's the best decision you can make. Step out of the circle and watch it disappear. That's the moment when you go from being material to being space. After that, you understand that you don't have to change every thought, feeling, or event to be at peace. All you have to do is return to stillness. It is not necessary to have no thoughts when meditating as a Buddhist. It means being present with whatever arises and letting it go. You train yourself to no longer be pulled in a certain direction by every inner movement. And as soon as you stop adding to the chaos, understanding does not simply appear. You have it within you. There is a small but powerful moment. It is the moment when you are aware that you are thinking without getting lost in it. That tiny flash of awareness is everything. That is what the gentle warrior does. Not power over the mind, but a connection to it. There is a small window of choice between awareness and reaction. Think of all the times you've tried to calm yourself down by thinking, overanalyzing, asking for help, using Google to find answers, writing in a book the whole time, and meditating more. And the noise hasn't gone away. But then think of that one moment, maybe even a second, when you just breathed, let go, and were there. From a Buddhist perspective, that moment is the present. And you don't have to try to be present. It wants you to give up. You're not giving up when you give in. It means giving in to the truth. You're giving in to what's happening. The mind stops spinning because it no longer has to fight. You didn't get the understanding because you reached for it. It came to you because you stopped pushing it away. Much of what stands in our way is resistance, not giving up on the pain. Don't fight the urge to know nothing. Don't want to be broken. But the noise disappears when this resistance subsides. Things start to look different from what your mind tells you. It's not the perfect mind that Buddhists talk about, but a calm one. A mind that doesn't make every problem an identity, not a mind that has no problems. You don't need to change the past right away. You don't need to know what will happen tomorrow. It's enough to be content with what is now and relax. That's what the good fighter does. He changes. He takes a deep breath. He looks. This makes him stronger than any storm. There is nothing to fix tonight. You don't have to change anything about yourself to feel happy. You will have mental clarity when you stop judging your worth by how much you accomplish or how well you have figured things out. You will have clarity when you understand that there is nothing missing in you or in this moment. At their core, everyone is still. It is a peaceful place that does not need to be earned. Because they have been taught to look outside themselves for answers, most people have forgotten how to get there. However, the kind warrior remembers. He closes his eyes. He listens to himself. His breath guides him, not to get away, but to arrive. There, in the gentle rhythm of inhaling and exhaling, he finds it, stillness. And in the stillness, there is clarity. Even if your mind is still busy, the day has been hard, and your heart doesn't know what to feel, this peace is already within you. You don't really need to feel it. Don't think about things like a monk. Just take a break. It's here, now, and just enjoy the moment. Because peace doesn't shout. It speaks softly. The gentle warrior learns to hear it by lying down beneath the noise instead of fighting it. Now that your body is calm and your breathing is easier, let the lesson sink in. Your thoughts should be still, even if only for a short time. And that's all it takes to become clear. You can't push things away. You can only let them go by letting them go. Make it easy on yourself. Please be calm. Make it easy on yourself. The first thing you need to do to free yourself is not to overdo it. You are already on your way. Now that the struggle is over and you can relax, it's time to go one step deeper. This time, the burden on your mind will not be lifted because you are repairing something, but because you are observing. To become aware, silence was the key that gently opened the door. But now we are beginning to see better with pure eyes, eyes that do not name things, gaze that does not hastily describe, eyes that simply see. Part of perception that most people never reach is too easy for the mind to grasp. This is not because it is hidden. As soon as the brain sees something, it gives it a name. Tree, person, sadness, noise, threat, comfort. It's like putting a price tag on everything. Before you can even breathe, the world is already divided into groups. Buddhism, however, teaches something completely different. Pure seeing. Not as an idea, not as a story, but as being there. In this lesson, don't think about turning off your thoughts. It's about noticing what is there before your thoughts arise. Just before you judge something, the truth resides within you. The fraction of a second before you say, "I like that," or "I don't like that," that is pure perception. And when you learn to dwell there, even if only for a second, the noise of life stops in a way that no external silence ever could. The mind doesn't have to disappear for pure awareness to work. It tells it to take a step back. It doesn't say no to thoughts, it just doesn't follow them. Most people think things like, "That shirt doesn't suit them," "They must be rich," or "Why did they look at me like that?" when they see someone. But the actual event was that someone walked by. That's all. That's the truth. Everything else was a matter of opinion. And perception is the beginning of pain. Seeing without labels is not about becoming a blank page. It's about not adding anything. It means seeing a flower without calling it beautiful or normal, hearing someone laugh without deciding whether it's annoying or happy. When you encounter a moment, you let it be what it is, without trying to change it, describe it, or put it in a mental box. When you do this over and over again, you feel calm. The world feels softer when you stop naming everything. The edges become smoother. You become more confident in your interactions with people. Your feelings are no longer as strong. You begin to understand something that will change your life. Most of the stress did not come from life itself, but from how you thought about it. As you listen, you hear sounds all around you. It could be the hum of the room, a distant car, the way you breathe. Notice how quickly your mind wants to label these sounds. Are they quiet, loud, disturbing, or relaxing? What would happen if these labels fell away? What if it was just noise? Nothing else. No background, just being there. People who teach Buddhism say, "See the world as it is, not as you are." That's because most people don't see the truth. They see how they react to it. They see what their fears look like. Their memories were intertwined. Their hopes were like a movie that covered up the present. Then they wonder why life is so hard, why people are so hard to understand, why it's so hard to keep the peace. It's history that gives it weight. Seeing is what makes things clear. Trust also shows itself in seeing without naming. Being sure that things are real, even if they are not described. Being sure that you don't have to understand something to let it be. The most important thing is to trust that the mind does not have to make sense of things in order to feel secure. It is often the commentary that frightens the mind. It is natural to judge. It's a way to keep things safe, but it ends up being a trap. The more things you judge, the smaller life becomes. People can become friends or enemies. Every moment can be good or bad. The burden of constant judgment also takes away clarity. But when the need to judge falls away, the mind opens up. It's like coming out of a narrow corridor and into a wide field. This is something children sometimes think. They see everything as new before they have learned all the names and rules. There is no thought behind what they see. They just look at the cloud. And in that gaze lies happiness. There is no doubt. It is not because of what the cloud is, but because nothing is added to it. It is not about behaving like a child. It's about undoing what has been superimposed on perception. Keeping the mind sharp, but not too sharp. Allowing the way things are seen to soften again. Being flexible, no cost. And it's not just the things outside of you. You can also see your own thoughts without naming them. Often, people connect with what pops into their heads. It's not visible when you say, "I had a jealous thought, so I must be a jealous person." That means labeling something as jealous. Pure seeing would pick up the thought without giving it a name. That's it. A thought came into my mind. I and my are not there. They are just thoughts. This is where healing begins. When the judgment is removed, the shame disappears. You understand that the voice in your head has never been you. You have always been just the place where it speaks. In this place, there is room to breathe, a place to rest, space to be. Yes, the mind will still try to categorize things. That's okay. It was taught to do so. The practice is not meant to get rid of the habit, but to capture it, to observe the labeling and then decide not to follow it. The awareness muscle gets stronger every time you do it. Awareness is what makes things clear. In this way, you can even see feelings. Feelings like sadness and anger don't need to be described with labels. They are just feelings, like how you move, like how the weather works. They don't need morality, they just need to be there. And being present doesn't come from judging, it comes from seeing. When you feel like you have too much to do, ask yourself, what am I adding? What story is being invented around the event? What name is making this moment something it doesn't need to be? Take it off. Stay relaxed. That doesn't mean you're cold or detached in life. The opposite is true. The heart opens when the labels come off. People are no longer judged. They are seen. You no longer try to control everything. You just are. You now know what something means. You are aware of what it is. That's what makes this a sacred act. It's the most honest way to connect with the truth. Don't wear masks. That's it. Just the beautiful, unadulterated truth. And in that place, life comes back to life. Colors look deeper. Sounds are louder. Even in silence, there is weight. This isn't about separation. This is depth. You begin to understand that things don't need names to be important. Things that cannot be named are often the ones that mean the most. Look around you. Almost. When something fits perfectly, you get a feeling in your chest. No label. It's just there. The more you do this, the more different your reactions will be. Why do you keep getting caught up in drama? Don't rely on praise. Stop being afraid of rejection. Because without names, things lose their power. Things that used to feel like personal attacks now feel like wins. What once felt like recognition now feels like a moment. That is freedom. Seeing without naming means regaining your attention. Stop giving peace of mind to every loud thought that pops up, and start choosing the things you give your attention to carefully and consciously. It's not easy, but it is simple. You feel better every time you do it, not from being numb, not from running away, but because you are facing life as it really is. No story, no judgment, just open, clear seeing. So let's start practicing. Tonight, let's slowly return to the vision that has always been there. Not how the mind sees the world, but the world itself, revealing itself clearly. Each breath should bring you more into the present moment. Let each sound be its own thing. Let each thought be a cloud. Don't grasp, don't chase, no names, just this. And now it is clear. The kind of clarity that comes from seeing less instead of knowing more. After you have slowly weaned yourself off labeling and now know what it is like to see without having to define, a new kind of space opens up for you. A clarity that does not depend on your ability to control your thoughts or name the present moment. However, this space is more than just the absence of noise. It goes deeper than that. It's a little less loud. The next step is not just to observe your thoughts, but to rest in what lies beneath them. That's where the most powerful silence you've never noticed can live. Most people don't notice something because it's silent, not because it's hidden. It's not the thoughts. It's not even the feelings. It's the space between them, that little space where nothing is said. No inner voice, no thoughts accompanying it, just being there. The door is through that hole. Something changes when the mind learns to rest there, even if only for a moment. Awareness improves. Tension disappears. The mind not only becomes calmer, it also feels cleaner. This is not the sound of an empty room. Every word is made of silence. Between every thought, between every pause. This is not something you make up. It is something you find. Because it is always there, between inhaling and exhaling, between thoughts. Most of the time, it is simply forgotten. Not out of malice. It's just the way it is. The mind constantly needs information. It looks for noise, excitement, and stories to tell. But when everything else is taken away, only consciousness remains, clear, still alive. Stories floating above it do not touch it. It can be strange for someone to notice this place for the first time. It's like being in a quiet neighborhood after living in a noisy city for years. You feel a strong urge to fill it. You want to add something, thoughts, questions, or other things that distract your attention. But after some practice, that need disappears. Eventually, the silence stops feeling empty and starts to feel nourishing. It's a place where nothing is missing and everything is completely clear. For Buddhists, focusing on the breath is a way to train their minds to notice this place and calm their bodies. The breath has a rhythm. Every time you breathe in and out, there is a brief but real moment when your mind can come to rest. This pause is like a gateway to silence. When you let your mind rest there for a while, something strange happens. You realize that thoughts never really possessed you. They were just there to be seen. Being calm between thoughts is not a goal. You don't achieve it when all your worries are resolved. You can achieve it right now, even when things are crazy. Even more so when things are crazy. It doesn't matter what your thoughts say about this silence. Your material doesn't change it. And once you start to linger in it, the weight of your thoughts falls away from you. This is not a blank space. It is alive. It is not insensitive. It is very alert. There is nothing in the way, so it is the best way to see. Awareness comes alive when the mind stops talking, and when you are awake, a different kind of mind emerges, not the kind that calculates, the mind that knows and needs no telling. How do you want to stay here? You don't let it happen, you see it. It's like putting your hand on still water to rest your mind on it. Friendly, with respect. You breathe into it. The next thought comes to you, but you don't hold on to it. You let it rise, you let it go. You stay with what remains after it has gone. In everyday life, thoughts come quickly, but there is always space. In the pause before answering a question, between what you see and what you do about it. When there is silence around a sound. If you focus your attention there more often, this focus becomes more stable. It is no longer just a moment. It becomes a place where the mind can return more easily. A feeling of being at home within yourself. This is what the masters mean when they speak of pure mind or Buddha mind. They do not mean a mind without thoughts, but a mind that is free of thoughts, a mind that is not afraid to be still, a mind that does not want to be distracted because it has found something much more satisfying, peace that requires no effort. Intuition can also be found in the space between thoughts. This kind of advice is what remains when the mental noise has disappeared. It is advice that does not use words, but speaks clearly. You no longer have to argue about what is right because you simply know. You know what is important without weighing up all the pros and cons, because the truth is clear when the mind is still. But this truth is not loud. It cannot compete. That is why it is so often overlooked. People seek knowledge in the most intense feelings, the loudest thoughts, or the most interesting stories. But true knowledge speaks when things are quiet. It emerges in the space in between. When you value the space more than the noise loses its power. The thoughts will still come. That's okay. The silence doesn't bother them. It lets them go and greets them, like clouds passing across a clear sky. The goal is not to become empty. The goal is to no longer think that every thought is the sky. There is space between these words, even now, while you are resting. And in this place, consciousness can grow. Not because of what is said, but because of what is not said. To clear the mind, it does not need more information. It needs fewer things, much less work. Not so much noise. That is why the space between thoughts is so powerful. It is not passive. It is the most alive state of consciousness you can have. It observes without getting in the way. That means it hears without translating. It knows and does not judge. It lets everything happen and cares about nothing. This understanding has no plan. It doesn't expect you to be productive. It doesn't try to find happiness. It's not afraid of being sad. It just sees. And this seeing makes everything okay again. Not because things have become easier, but because you've stopped fighting against what was already there. Being so quiet doesn't mean you have to do nothing. The depth grows. You pay more attention. You are better attuned, not so airy. You stop reacting out of habit and start reacting from where you are. It becomes easier to make decisions. Feelings become clearer, not because life has changed, but because it feels easier to relate to it. When people talk constantly, silence is important, and life begins to make more sense when you learn to listen to that silence, not to the anger, not to the train of thought, but to the gentle beat of truth that doesn't have to shout to be heard. Now take a break there, in that quiet place. Feel your awareness soften. Feel things become clearer. It wasn't like a wave coming in, but more like fog rising from the ground. Take your time. Be gentle. Be true. It's not about reaching a magical state. It's about returning to what is already there. Your mind will tell you that it's not enough. You need to learn more, think more, and do more. That is, until you get to this place. What's left is clean. Okay, complete. Remember, the silence was always there, even when you lose yourself in the noise again, which you will. It's still there, waiting for you to notice it. Not outside, but underneath. Below the thoughts, next to the labels, underneath all the work. Always further down. You don't learn how to make peace. You become more and more aware of where it has always been. There is one more thing we need to clarify now that you have touched the silence beneath your thoughts and are resting in this deep, wordless awareness where understanding simply arises from being and not from thinking. Not within the mind, but close to it. One of the worst ideas ever to come out of Buddhist thinking in terms of how it is used and understood. A thought that has been twisted so many times that it no longer makes sense. Yet, when understood correctly, It is one of the purest and most powerful truths to live by. It's time to talk about real karma, not the kind you see in jokes. Punishment is not what karma is. The world does not keep a ledger. There is no cosmic scoreboard waiting to catch people at their worst. It's not about getting revenge on someone or giving them something. At its core, karma is about being clear. It's about what happened and why, not in some distant future, but right now. Here it is, now. Every thought, every word, and every decision sends out ripples that go out and come back, not as a verdict, but for this reason. When karma becomes a myth, people get confused. My first thought when someone cuts in line is, "Don't worry, karma will get them." That belief makes me feel good, but it's not what I need to believe. It's not about someone else's path of karma. It's about you. It's not a way to keep things under control. It's like a mirror, a direct reflection of how the things you do affect your life now, not tomorrow. Karma doesn't wait for future punishment when you choose anger. Anger is the punishment, the inner rigidity, the way it makes things hard to see, the way it changes the world. Once that energy is picked up, something bad starts to happen. That's fate. It's not a spiritual police officer. It's just the way things happen. It's not a golden star in the sky when someone decides to be kind. The result is that the heart immediately softens. A feeling of lightness goes through the body. When the mind is not involved in harm, it becomes clear. That is karma. It is not a price, but a reflection. This knowledge takes away the dream and brings us back to the real world. It shows that everything you do is connected to what you feel. Not because God is punishing us, but because what we do creates something new. Thoughts give rise to feelings. Intentions change our view of things. The way people talk determines how the world acts. Everything is connected. And once you understand that, duty no longer feels like a burden, but like power. When people don't understand karma, it becomes a way to blame others for their pain. You must have done something wrong to deserve that, one might say. But that's not true either. Buddhism does not say that all pain is deserved. It says that the way we deal with what happens is just as important as what happens. In this space, there is freedom. Even if you are not responsible for something, the way you respond has karma. It lies in the decision to cling or let go, to reject or accept, to act out of fear or with clarity. No one can take that power away from us, not even when things are difficult. That's where true peace begins. When the need for life to be fair disappears, you can focus on how to deal with it. There is no scoreboard keeping track of points. There is only being present. Because you are here, you have a choice. Karma is not a word or a phrase. It is a path, a loop of inputs. When you know more, you can make better decisions. Your mind will feel lighter when you make better decisions. That's the truth. Not in knowing what comes next, but in knowing that you mean it. Pop culture has turned karma into something that exists outside of people. It looks like it's watching from afar. But in reality, fate is personal. Things don't just happen to you, it's something you allow to happen. Every movement sets the tone for the next second, and that's it. There is no canvas. It's all about speed. When this is recognized, the shame begins to disappear. Karma is not a way to feel bad. It's time to wake up. Pay attention, it says. Pay attention to what your actions cause. Choose something else if you don't like the result. No need to turn around. Just be there. Just start. Just gain clarity through trial and error. This knowledge also makes it unnecessary to judge other people. Since karma no longer serves to condemn others, you no longer waste time hoping that they get what they deserve. Instead, you focus on yourself. What kind of waves are you making? Where are you living your life? What loops are you stuck in? And how can you break out of them? Karma is also not fate. Karma and awareness belong together because it does not say, "This is who you are, and you cannot change." Instead, it says, "This is what you have done, and you can always change." Without awareness, karma happens without you being aware of it. Old habits keep reappearing. Decisions are based on reactions, and life seems like a cycle you can't get out of. But as soon as awareness sets in, the loop weakens. You catch the moment just before the outburst. You want to do it, but you don't. You pause. You take a deep breath. That's when the pattern is broken. That's also karma, but not as a debt. It's a turning point. Every pause is a turning point. Every moment of awareness interrupts the old path and makes room for a new one. It's not loud when this clarity is used. Not, "You've got your life together," but "You're no longer sleepwalking through your life." It's a different kind of peace. Not the peace of being perfect, but the peace of being in the right place. You know you're not causing any more harm, that your decisions are in line with your ideals. And when things are in harmony, understanding grows. Buddhists also believe that language has a lot to do with karma. What is said sets the process of understanding in motion. This is true for both the speaker and the people who hear them. Every complaint, every insult, and every dramatization changes the truth. And these changes make things confusing. But when words are clean, when they come from kindness and truth, the mind also becomes clear. Not because it wants to be holy, but because it is free of noise. The same applies to the way you think. Thoughts are important, not because they are magical, but because they change people's attention. Repeating a thought turns it into an opinion. A thought becomes a lens, and that lens shapes how we see the world. The lens becomes cloudy when those thoughts come from fear. When they come from being, the lens becomes clear. Karma is the way your mind changes its form, and that form tells you how to feel in that moment. This is not just theory. It has been lived. No matter what your thoughts are right now, go back and find them. What did you think, do, and feel that brought you to this point? Not to blame, to examine. You can choose your next step more freely when you can see the path more clearly. And when things get too hard, karma is kind. You can end the cycle whenever you want. You can move on without fixing the past. All you have to do is pay attention to the moment. The mind wants to make things harder. It wants to know what else needs to be better so I can be free. But karma tells it, you're already in the next moment. Use it. Every slow breath, every small act of kindness. When you choose truth over convenience, kindness over pride, and clarity over reaction, you change the game. Yes, slowly, but very powerfully. You'll notice it. The inner rigidity begins to disappear. It doesn't hurt as much as it used to, and the understanding you begged for before comes to you on its own. This is not a magical dream, it is a useful awakening. Karma is the most practical way to learn. No magic. I just want cause and effect. See very clearly. Do good things. And peace is not a prize, but a result. You are not being judged now. You are being made. Every breath you take makes the next one possible. The fog is cleared by every thought you let go without grasping it. You make things clearer with every quiet word, every moment of silence, and every time you choose the present over habit. In real time, and that is justice. Let this truth sink in. Set it apart from the rest. You are not waiting for the world to deliver justice. You are not trying to escape a punishment you cannot see. With every breath, you choose to be different. That difference changes everything. Teachers knew this long ago. Fear is not karma. Free will is karma. Not power, but understanding. No one is following you. It is being shown to you. Ultimately, you understand karma as clarity from moment to moment, not as fate or punishment. This makes it easier for you to recognize your power. Every word you say, every action you take, and every breath you take sends waves forward. As this unfolds, a question also arises. What happens when pain arises? Because it will come. Things will still happen, even if you are conscious and in the present moment. But what matters is what you do in those situations. This leads to the next lesson, which is about a habit that most people don't even know they have. Problems are not always caused by pain. Sometimes the problem is what comes after. The reaction that follows the wound in silence. This is what Buddhists call the second arrow. The first arrow is the pain that life brings, such as loss, rejection, failure, and sadness. These things will happen. However, the mind shoots the second arrow at itself. The shame, the judgment, the thoughts that go round and round in circles. The one that says, "This shouldn't have happened," or "I'm weak for feeling this way." Often, the second shot does more damage than the first. Many people are unaware of this second line. They think that their pain is the only cause of their suffering, but this pain, no matter how bad it is, usually lasts only a short time. It is difficult because it is intensified by the mental resistance you put up against it, making it a habit to replay it, to ask about it, to pursue it further. That is when the weight becomes heavier. That is what makes things less clear. This is a method for having pain without making it worse, for feeling uncomfortable without making it who you are, for being sad without labeling it a failure. When you do this regularly, something amazing happens. The pain becomes less intense. It's not that the world gets easier, it's that your mind stops making things harder. In this lesson, one thing is required of you. Be honest. What am I contributing to this is a gentle question to ask yourself when you are hurt. It's a question that cuts through the noise. The pain is not condemned, just the air around it is cleared. It tells you whether the pain you feel comes from the event itself or from the thoughts running through your head. Sadness could be the first sign. The second story, on the other hand, makes you think, "I should be over this by now." Shame could be the first direction, but the second voice is the one that says, "No one else feels this broken." Things happen in life, but it is the internal reaction, the additional arrow, that makes the wound deeper and keeps it open longer. It is not about holding back feelings. The goal is to free them from the assumptions that hold them together. It is not necessary to label anger as bad when it arises. Let it be anger. Allow it to pass. The second arrow, on the other hand, begins when your mind says, "I shouldn't feel this," or "I'm a bad person for reacting this way." It can be dropped as soon as it is recognized. You have to be there to see this line, because it's there in a flash, sometimes in a matter of seconds. You'll see it everywhere if you know where to look. When you're disappointed, you blame yourself. When you're afraid, it turns into shame. When you're sad, it turns into depression. The second line seems like the truth, but it's not. It's a habit. You too can change your habits. If you are aware of this, you are protected. Don't try to avoid the pain. Face it head-on. Feel without breaking. Hurt without becoming harder. This kind of strength is different. A strength that does not fight the pain, but also does not allow it to get worse. This gives you freedom, true freedom. You know that life doesn't have to be perfect for you to find peace. You should stop making your pain worse, and you have the power to do that. There's no need to fire the second shot, whether out of pain or sadness. You can stop. You can breathe. You know that the pain is only temporary. True, you are in control, and most importantly, it's not personal. Life is painful. That's what makes us human. But the kind of suffering that lingers, haunts, and clouds the mind often comes from the stories we tell ourselves about the pain. These stories aren't true. This shouldn't be happening to me. This proves there's something wrong with me, and I'll never be healthy again. These are second shots. They lose their power once people recognize them for what they are. You don't have to block the first shot. Let it hit the ground. Feel it. It might hurt. It might make you shake. But it will pass. Pain passes. Resistance is what keeps it in place. The hold. The idea that it makes you who you are. Clarity closes the gap between what you feel and what you think it means. You can feel pain without making it part of who you are. You are strong even when you cry. You can be lost and still be in the middle of life, because you don't make things harder when they're already hard. But you don't become insensitive. It means you get more space. Big enough to let pain through without getting stuck. Big enough to see clearly and feel everything. Big enough for the second shot to land before it hits. This lesson also teaches kindness, because when you realize how often you hurt yourself, you begin to see other people in a new light. You feel their anger as more pain. Their mean words sound like second arrows they don't even know they're shooting, and instead of reacting, you become gentler. Not to allow the pain, but to stop the cycle that makes the pain worse. The second line is also important because it changes our perspective. Things look worse when you're stuck in mental pushback. Your mind shrinks. Your judgment deteriorates. Solutions disappear. The fog clears when the second shot is fired. You can breathe again. Clear your mind. Use your head. Not out of fear, but because they were there. Buddhism does not promise a life without pain. It gives you a life in which you do not use your pain against yourself. It gives you insight that comes from feeling rather than from trying to fix things. Instead of struggling, it comes from seeing. The more you practice, the faster you will be able to recognize the second line. You will think, "This always happens to me," but you won't believe it. Instead, you will pause. "Is this true?" The voice will tell you, "You're not strong enough," but you won't flinch. Instead, you will breathe more firmly. In these moments, things change. To be clear, the story must end. You are not the second row. You are the place where it can be seen. You can choose in this seeing, not whether the pain comes or not, but whether it stays longer than it has to, whether it turns into identity or is just a passing cloud. Stay here now, in this quiet and clear space of being. Don't change the first direction. Allow it to come. Give it up, and let peace grow where it was before. Not because life has become easier, but because you have stopped making it harder. You know the danger. You are now free and can leave. Now that the second arrow has been dropped, a different kind of understanding begins to grow. One can see that most suffering is not caused by the pain itself, but by what the mind does with the pain. One that changes the form of what comes out of the mouth, as well as what is inside. Because the next thing that is said is the next wave after the inner chaos has subsided. And here is the truth that most people overlook. What people say does not only affect themselves, it shapes the structure of the mind. Language is more than just the exchange of ideas. It cuts them. That is where the next lesson lies. There is a way to purify the mind that requires neither silence nor meditation. It starts with your tongue, with words, with what is said aloud, whispered, or thought over and over again. Because everything that is said reveals how clear or clouded the mind is. One of the most important parts of Buddhist practice is right speech, which is often overlooked. It's not about being nice or quiet. It's not about hiding what makes others feel bad or sugarcoating the truth. Speaking right means having a clear head, a clear mind, a mind that is not caught up in fear, anger, ego, or control. When your speech comes from this truth, it makes you smarter all around. Once they have been spoken, words do not disappear. They echo, not only in the ears of others, but also in your own body and nerves. Harsh words stick. They make your chest feel tighter. They make me feel bad. And the mind remains in this state, reactive, stressed, and foggy, the more often they are used. But clear, honest, and reasoned language clears the air inside and outside. It creates a steady and gentle rhythm of thought. And this rhythm becomes a way of organizing your thoughts. When you say the right thing, you should think about 4 things. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? And is it necessary? These are not rules about right and wrong. They are ways to become clear, because lies change things as they are. Distracting talk diverts focus. Cruel words hurt the heart. Unnecessary talk also makes it hard to think clearly. The inner world gets louder every time it is ignored. But when you respect it, you create mental space. Thoughts become clearer. Focus returns. This doesn't mean that everything you say has to be profound. It just means that it has to be conscious. Much of what we say every day happens automatically. We complain out of habit, we talk to fill the void, and we argue to feel responsible. However, Each of these things becomes a thread in the web of mental noise. Over time, this web becomes stronger and stronger. When the mind feels stuck, words are often to blame. Complaining, for example, can feel good, but it makes us look even harder for things that are wrong. When the glass is used, not only does the way you speak change, but also the way you see. The mind begins to see more problems when there are none. Rumors bring people together, but they also make people distrustful in subtle ways. They are afraid of being judged and do not trust silence. It is more difficult to find peace when the mind is stuck in this world. When people speak angrily, they often feel powerful, but it hurts. A pain that lingers long after the conversation is over. To break this cycle, you have to find the right words, not by causing silence, but by getting back to the point of what was said. It's less about language and more about intention. What are these words meant to build? What kind of mood does each line create? No, monks don't practice silence because language is bad. They do it because silence shows how much language is unnecessary, and when the silence ends, what they say means more. Their power isn't lost. They aren't spread out. They are clear. And being clear not only changes how other people hear them, but also how they think about themselves. But it's not about being silent all the time. Speaking correctly includes expressing yourself. Saying hard things is part of it. Setting boundaries is part of it. But it doesn't do that with venom, without hidden agendas, without the ego getting in the way of the message. He only says what he needs to say. She tells the truth without being mean. She draws lines, but she does it with kindness. And when you do that regularly, it has a big impact on your mind. Your thoughts begin to organize themselves. The habit of mental confusion begins to disappear, because you can only write clear words when your thoughts are clear. It's like brushing your teeth, but instead of your teeth. Every time you use good words, it cleans you up. A polish. Over time, the brain begins to want this kind of order. This also includes talking to yourself. Even if no one else hears what you say to yourself, the words are powerful. These words form your inner structure. You tell yourself that you are a failure, that you are behind, and you tell yourself stories of fear over and over again. They allow you to see things more clearly. Thought will follow when the inner voice is friendly, true, and present. All speech begins with self-speech, and this tone comes through in everything. It is possible that your subconscious, which tells you stories while you are doing something, either confuses or focuses your attention. This is pointless, your mind tells you as you walk. That is a thought, but it is also a sentence. This statement changes the feeling of walking. The body softens when the voice in the background says, "Just walk." Your breathing becomes deeper. Your presence returns. That is the power of speech, not only out loud, but also in your head. Telling the truth also makes relationships easier, because when you stop using words to trick, defend, or exaggerate, it's easy to build a relationship. Be honest. Be peaceful. These conversations are less about winning and more about learning. It becomes easier to listen, and silence is no longer uncomfortable, it is comfortable. You are no longer afraid of what is not said. Noise is no longer a means of avoiding encountering yourself. That doesn't mean perfect. It means you have to pay attention. You will still fall. It will still be wrong, but you will notice the change. And when you notice it, you will begin to grow. You will notice it in the middle of a sentence. You will wait a moment before you respond. You will ask yourself, does this make things clearer or more confusing? And over time, this pause will become your strength. Freedom of speech is also a safety net. It prevents the mind from hurting itself. It keeps other people safe. It keeps the heart from feeling bad about something. When you say something honest, there's nothing to clean up later. There's no inner garbage to sort through. A fresh start, a clear offer, and the peace that comes from knowing you've said something good. Being mentally clean in this way is what it means. Not just peace, but also skill. Not just control, but also mindfulness. And with every step of this exercise, the mind feels better. It's not about life becoming quieter. It's just about talking, stopping making the noise inside worse. Now stay in this clear state. Even when you don't say anything, let your words show that you are practicing. Let them cleanse, not pile things up. Let them serve the truth, not what people want. Keep your thoughts sharp, light, and friendly during this service. That's because clean language produces clean thoughts. And once your mind is clear, you no longer have to search for clarity. It simply comes through you, without any effort. But of course, in every way. Now that your language is clean, and your words, spoken and unspoken, are in line with the present rather than with habit, you have already begun to change the way your mind is structured. It is not just the peace you choose, you make it yourself. But the better the view becomes, the more something else comes into focus. Even in the calmest minds, powerful but subtle forces are at work that make it difficult for us to make decisions that change our view of things and wake us up from our inner peace without our noticing. They don't disappear just because we want them to. They will only let go of us when we stop fighting them and see them for what they are. This is the beginning of the next lesson. They were called the 5 hindrances by the Buddha. That is, not as curses, but as signs to be cautious. There are 5 emotional states that make it difficult to be attentive, wise, and clear-sighted. These are not flaws in who you are. They are thoughts floating around, and each of them turns into a fog when it is not seen. But when you can see them clearly, they disappear, not because you fought them, but because you no longer feed them. First of all, desire gets in the way. Not the kind that makes you creative or connects you to others, but the kind that makes you feel like this moment is not enough. It pulls your mind forward, always striving for something, never happy. When you want something, you think that the next meal, the next message, or the next moment will make you happy. It feels like movement, but it's actually a loop. One that changes now to not yet. Desire isn't the problem. You forget that the happiness you're chasing won't last, and that's the problem. That the desire will return, even if you get what you want. This is unraveled through recognition. When you look at desire as it arises, without guilt but with clarity, it begins to lose its influence. You stop chasing and start observing. And through that, the desire disappears more quickly. The second is aversion, a way for the mind to push life away. It shows up as irritation, anger, bitterness, and rejection. Aversion tells us this shouldn't be happening, and it makes us believe that the only way to feel better is to fight against it. But friction is created by resistance. It keeps the pain from moving. Your perspective is limited by aversion. It narrows the heart and clears the mind. But something softens when it is seen clearly and without judgment. You begin to feel your body tense up. The anger behind the words. It is the story that makes people react. The fire begins to die when you just see it and call it by its name. You don't have to agree with what's going on. Stop fighting the fact that it is the way it is. The third problem is laziness and inaction. It's not just about being tired, but having a heavy, foggy feeling that says, "What's the point?" A dullness of mind that makes everything seem far away. This is not laziness, but a sense of being cut off. Although the body is awake, the mind has turned off the lights. And the longer you don't notice it, the harder it becomes. But once again, force is not the answer. It is attention. Sitting with the weight without connecting to it is what it means. That's the mind wanting to sleep, you can say, when you feel the urge to switch off. Sometimes just saying that is enough to bring light back into the darkness. It is not by pushing, but by being present, that the energy returns. The next thing is restlessness. The itchiness of the mind, the buzzing noise in the background that makes you constantly scan, change, and move. That's not quite right, it says. It forces us to jump from one thought to the next, from one task to the next, and from one breath to the next. Restlessness means moving without reason. It's the false idea of growth, and it makes things unclear, like wind on glass. But it can be calmed once you recognize it. The mind should not be fixed. It should be left alone. You feel the need to change. You stay anyway. When you shake up the mind, you can watch it calm itself down again. That is the power to see something for what it really is, not as a trick. The mind does not need more movement. It needs to become calmer. And then there is doubt, the quietest problem causer, and sometimes the deadliest. Not serious questions, but uncertainty that makes you unable to move. This practice doesn't work, says that voice. Something is wrong with you. It's not important. Doubt kills the seeds of effort. It makes you think twice. It creates a fog that clouds even the clearest vision. But doubt is only about how you see things. You don't see them as truth, but as a temporary change in the weather. There is no need to shut it down. You just need to realize that the mind doubts, not you. It was just a thought that passed through. And doubt becomes smaller when held in this way, with space between you and it. Decisions are no longer made based on doubt. It becomes background noise. And once again, understanding is there. These problems are not mistakes, they are human beings. Every thought hits them. It's not about how to avoid them, it's about how to connect with them. Suppression makes them stronger, but when you know them, they soften. When you know about poisons, they become teachers, and these problems don't usually show up on their own. They often feed each other. Restlessness is caused by desire. Lack of peace leads to doubt. Lack of faith leads to aversion. Aversion leads to isolation. The loop continues. But when you become aware of something, the loop is broken. You pause. You say what is there, and the hold weakens. Perhaps you see one of them right now. There is a thought pulling you into the future. Your chest feels a little tight, a fog over your eyes, a question about this lesson in particular. That is unnecessary. That is the entrance. Every obstacle is a path back to clarity, but not by defeating it, but by facing it fully, without fear, without shame, just being there. When this awareness becomes a habit, the mind begins to cleanse itself. Not in a moral way, but in a way that works. The fog disappears, things become less stable. Clarity becomes the norm, not because the problems disappear forever, but because they can no longer hold us back. You will still want things, but they will no longer drive you. You will still be angry, but it will no longer control you. You will still be tired, but that will not define you. You will still have doubts, but they will not stop you. That is powerful strength, the kind that does not come from control, but from knowing something. Buddhism doesn't expect people to be perfect. It asks people to be aware, and the 5 hindrances make this point clearer than anything else. You don't have to never feel them. You should pay attention to them. Say hello. Sit next to them without turning into them. And with that, you begin to cleanse not only the tip of your mind, but also its roots. Allow what you are doing to be. See without fighting it. Name things without judging them. Encounter instead of connecting. And as you do so, feel your mind becoming lighter. Not by adding anything, but by letting go of things that never really belonged to you. You don't have to fight to be clear. You should stop adding to the fog. You have already begun to clear the way your mind sees the world, now that you know that the 5 obstacles are not enemies, but signs, not mistakes, but opportunities to become more aware. Even more than thoughts and feelings, there is something even closer. It moves all the time and is constantly trying to tell you something. Many people don't notice it because it's too simple to be important. But when you really pay attention to it, it becomes one of the most honest ways to learn about the hidden state of the mind. It's time to focus on the breath and not just learn how to control it. The breath is like a mirror. Being aware of its state before you even think about it, that's what it means. Tense muscles show up as shallow breathing. Fear shows up as holding your breath. Letting go is often accompanied by long exhalations. However, your body does not wait for your mind to catch up. It acts immediately, and the breath is its trigger. You don't have to understand this first. You can feel it in this moment if you are attentive. Most people only pay attention to their breath when it hurts, when they are stressed, tired, or panicking. But at that point, the breath is no longer the beginning of the story, but the end. This lesson is about something calmer, learning how to catch your breath in real time. Notice how the weather inside your body affects each inhale and exhale. And when you do, you will begin to see deep patterns that have been living inside you without your knowledge. Take the word stress. The breath becomes shorter when the mind is overloaded with thoughts. It rises into the chest. It is no longer even. Most people don't even notice this change. The body, however, does. It prepares for danger. The nervous system becomes stronger. Thoughts become rapid. You breathe as if you are being chased without realizing it. What would help you understand your inner state immediately is to pause and feel your breath. Don't change it. Just feel it. You would understand that you are not calm. You are not stable. And more importantly, you would understand that until now, you had no idea how far you were from clarity. The smell is honest. It's not hidden. It just reflects. You start to see not only your breath, but also the mind behind it when you begin to observe it, not to control it, but to find out what's wrong. At this point, change is possible. not because you tried to be calm, but because you stopped unconsciously exacerbating the stress. It feels as if each breath has its own rhythm. This is not only physical, but also mental. When you are in a hurry, you may have a rushed breath. A quiet breath may indicate withdrawal. An involuntary jerk may be a sign of inner resistance, and a long sigh can mean that something is finally free. But that's something you can only see when you slow down. Your breath speaks to you without words, and when you learn to listen, you can understand it better. When you sleep, your breathing is like your thoughts. That's why breathing patterns are often caused by old emotional routines. Some people breathe in a way that has made them feel anxious or controlled for decades, but they never think to pay attention to their breath. They chase after their thoughts, change their plans, and reorganize their routines without realizing that the blueprint has been in their breath for years. This is where awareness becomes change, not by changing everything at once, but by paying attention to every breath. Every breath is like a pause, just one thought. Over time, all these small moments of mindfulness begin to break down the larger patterns of unconscious stress. How you feel in silence is also reflected in your breath. If your body doesn't want to inhale slowly, it may not want to be calm. If exhaling feels strange, it could mean that you have been avoiding letting go. These are words, not just physical reactions. You don't have to watch every breath to notice them. It means being close enough to feel when your breath speaks clearly and knowing that it's important to listen to what it's saying. There are times when you feel like you can't breathe, not because of an actual illness, but because of something that hasn't been said. Grief that hasn't yet come to the surface, a decision that hasn't been made, a worry that hasn't yet come true. As soon as your attention lands there, gently, without judgment, the space begins to grow. Not because your breath needed to go deeper, but because your body was free to let go. A deep breath does this, not by force, but by being honest. Every full breath is a new beginning. It tells the nervous system that it is safe. It stops the flow of wandering thoughts. Over time, the body learns to stop preparing for war when there is none. It teaches presence as a feeling, not an idea. There is also a way that the present breathes. It takes longer, better, not forced. The mind no longer gets in the way of the body's flow, not because you try to breathe deeply. The breath begins to move easily and on its own. And this lightness does not remain only in the chest. It shows itself in your thoughts, your posture, and the way you see, hear, and speak. For this reason, monks and other practitioners have long placed the breath at the center of consciousness training, not because it is mysterious, but because it is the easiest way to get to the present moment. You can always take it with you, always in motion, always true. And the breath not only shows where the stress is, it can also relieve it. The nervous system begins to calm down when you simply observe your breath as it comes in and out without changing it. Being still helps you see the next thought more clearly, to wait before responding, to really listen. Not because you've learned something new, but because you've let go of what was bothering you. And the more you do this, the more your breath becomes your friend. A calm guide. Throughout the day, you begin to engage with it, not as a habit, but as a conversation. When someone wants to lie, you can feel them change. When fear rises, you can see it pause. When the truth is spoken, you can feel it grow. These little messages create a map, not just of where you are, but also of how to get back on track when you stray. There is no need for flawless skills. There is no one best way to breathe. The important thing is to be attentive. Be there. Be ready to pause and feel. Be honest about what your breath is saying and allow it to change on its own. This is understanding in real time, the kind that comes from taking in more deeply instead of thinking more, seeing sooner, having more trust. And from this comes more than just a calm mind. Life is clear. Take one deep breath after another. Stay with your breath as you rest here. Let it speak. Allow it to think. Let it loosen everything that still feels tight. Remember, there is nothing to fix. There is nothing to manage. A deep breath doesn't make things better. It's a mirror that shows you the truth, and when you see that, peace returns. You don't need to go far to find clarity. It's already rising in your chest and through your nose. All you need to do is feel it. Now that you know that your breath is more than just air, that it's a mirror that shows you the shape of your thoughts and the truth of your inner state, another layer begins to peel away. You now understand that presence is in the body, that the mind calms down when it listens instead of talking, and that real-time awareness reduces stress without force. But behind every habit and every feeling lies something bigger that determines the way you see the world. And most people don't think twice about it because they feel that they are the way they are. But that is precisely what makes so much that could be clear unclear. Now we are going to talk about the self, which seems like the most solid idea, but is actually the most flexible. We almost always believe that behind all our thoughts, plans, and actions, there is a fixed I. That's happening to me. I feel that, and I need that are all nice phrases. The problem is that people believe this means something that will not change. Buddhism calls this false idea of a fixed self anatta, which means not self. This does not mean that we reject the experience, but that we liberate it. For the more firmly we hold on to our identity, the more confused reality becomes. Often, mental confusion begins with the idea that thoughts are part of a fixed self. But what happens when that belief is broken? Not as a set of rules to remember, but as a way of life. Once the mind realizes that the I is not fixed, but a changing process, our view of things changes. Thoughts no longer feel so private. Stop seeing your feelings as proof of who you are. And there is another kind of peace in that space. Being aware of yourself is not a problem in itself. Something is wrong because you hold on to it. People see it as dominant, stable, and permanent. However, if you look closely, it becomes clear that the self is just a story made up of memories, preferences, fears, and dreams. The story changes when these things change. But most people struggle to maintain the appearance of continuity so that they don't notice the change. And this struggle causes people to suffer. Think about anger, for example. When you are angry, you may think, "I am angry." But this statement connects who you are with your feeling. How about simply saying, "Anger is present"? This small change creates space. It takes the I out of the feeling. It helps to view the feeling as fleeting, not as something that defines your entire being, but as a weather pattern passing through your consciousness. This change is not cold or distant. It shows kindness. Because once the illusion of self is weakened, there is no longer a need to support every thought, mood, or argument. It becomes less important to be right. It is no longer so scary to be wrong. When there is no longer a rigid I to guard, the mind becomes more open and less reactive. This is the point where your mind begins to become clearer. Everything is more open when your own self is not at the center of every story. It is easier to listen when you are not just waiting for your turn to speak. It is easier to apologize when it does not feel like an attack on your personality. It is possible to grow when change does not mean losing yourself. Comparing things is also caused by the idea of a certain self. Am I better than her? Am I good enough? What does that say about me? These questions do not help us understand. They make people tired. This is because the mind becomes increasingly divided when it tries to keep up with or improve an invented I. The more the mind is split between doing and being, the worse it is. But when the fantasy is interrupted, even if only for a short time, the energy that was used for self-protection can be used for something else, such as being present, connecting with others, or being friendly. The mind stops revolving around itself. And in this silence, there is space to really see. That is why Buddhist meditation is not just about calming the mind. The nature of the self is explored, not to hurt the person, but to show what is not necessary, so that they understand that the person who struggles the most, the one who fights, holds on, and is afraid, is not real, but a pattern. It is possible to recognize trends. When you see them clearly, they fall apart. The voice in your head that tells you about every moment is not the self. It is just another consciousness that arises. Even when it says I, it is the same as a sound or a feeling. It is just another piece of information. When this voice is accepted unquestioningly, suffering begins. But when awareness takes a step back and observes it, that voice is just something else that happens, not the person you are, nothing more than what you see. This does not eliminate your personality. It actually makes it better. You still have likes, dislikes, memories, and experiences, but they no longer own you. Stop making your personality out of them. This allows you to react more naturally, honestly, and intelligently. Attachment to the self also makes loss a stress factor. It becomes a threat to identity when something goes wrong. I failed becomes I am a failure. But failure is no longer an identity when the I is taken away. It is not something to be afraid of, but something to learn from. It's the same with success. When success defines who you are, you worry about losing your position, your recognition, or your goal. Happiness is easier to achieve when the I is seen as a temporary part of things. Pressure is replaced by gratitude. Performance is replaced by presence. More truth comes to light when there is less to hide. The self can get in the way of spiritual practice, the need to be seen as calm, wise, and knowledgeable. But you don't have to be able to see clarity. It's not about improving yourself as an I. It's about not having to be one at all. When you let go, the practice ceases to be a goal and transforms into freedom. This also changes the way we think about pain. When pain is connected to identity, it hurts more. It becomes my sadness, my trauma, or my fear, and the connection makes the hold stronger. But healing can happen when sadness is seen for what it is, sadness, and not as a flaw in the person. Because the story is not necessary for healing, it just takes up space. Nihilism is not what anatta is. It does not say that you do not exist. It shows that you are not always what you think you are. And fighting this change makes things even more confusing. Accepting it brings peace. Since the mind does not need a permanent identity, it does not have to fight to hold on to every thought or avoid every problem. And this silence makes things clear. When the self is let go, meditation also changes. It is no longer so much about, I am trying to concentrate, but rather, the consciousness rests in itself. It is less about growth and more about being there. It is not so much about getting things done, but rather about seeing clearly what is there. This is what insight into the non-self does. A mind that doesn't have to be anyone to be at peace. A heart that doesn't have to play a certain role to love. A presence that doesn't depend on identity to remain stable. Now, let go of your sense of I. Make it less sharp, not so rigid. Just one more step, just one more bit of growth. There's no reason to get rid of it. Don't hold on to it so tightly. Let your personality live. Allow it to move. Take a break. Everything else is easier to see when there is more space around the self. You're not going away. You can finally see. There is something else that begins to slip away after the self is recognized for what it is. Not a fixed thing, but a fluid process. Not a core identity, but a pattern of thoughts and memories that comes and goes. When you no longer need to protect a fixed I, your mind begins to reveal another of its insidious traps. A habit that doesn't seem harmful and even makes sense, but slowly causes stress, restlessness, and mental clutter. The need to think every thought through to the end. The need for mental peace. The need to finish things that don't need to be finished. This is where the next lesson comes in. When a thought remains unfinished, you feel uncomfortable. A question with no answer. A sentence that doesn't end. An idea that pops up and disappears again before it is resolved. For most people, this pain is not a choice. It makes me keep searching, think more, and make a decision. In Buddhism, however, it is about something much more subtle and liberating, being able to leave a thought unfinished, not having the last word and letting it go, leaving before the circle is closed. It may not seem important, but it makes a big difference. Because most mental noise does not come from what someone feels, but from what they want. The mind wants to finish. It wants a simple way out. But that doesn't happen very often in life. Conversations end quickly. Plans don't work out. Relationships don't end when they begin. And if the mind has never learned to be still with what is not finished, it tries to make sense of the chaos by practicing, repeating, imagining, and repairing. Thought after thought, scene after scene, there is no end to the loop. Stopping the loop may not mean getting rid of the thought, but giving up the need to respond to it. Ignoring a thought is not the same as letting it go. Ignoring means pushing it away. When you let go, you watch it rise without holding on to it. It is not holding back. It is a gentle exhalation. There is a trusting voice that says, "This does not have to be over to be over." This is where mental lightness begins, because the mind feels more open when thoughts are allowed to remain open. Like a blank sheet of paper that isn't quickly scribbled on. It's not empty. The space is clear. It's calm. It becomes a space where consciousness can rest instead of running away. The mind likes to tell stories about how peace will come when everything is clear, every conversation sorted out, every memory tidied up, every loose thread tied up. But in doing so, we forget that it is grasping that causes tension. The very thing that makes it impossible to find peace is the search for it. Much emotional pain is caused by loops. Loops in the mind. Loops that repeat themselves over and over again. Loops of planning, deciding, and reviewing. And every loop begins with an unfinished thought. Why did they say that? What if I had done something differently? The thought arises. I have to find out. It arises, and the mind comes into play. It moves through the maze, looking for a way out. But the way out only becomes apparent when you no longer have to go. Thinking a thought through to its conclusion does not always lead to clarity. It can happen that you know you have to finish something, but you don't. That is the power of knowledge. When you see the beginning of the loop, you don't jump into it. Instead, you pause. You want to just think about it a little more, but instead, you decide to breathe. You don't fight the thought or give it your full attention. You didn't do anything about it. And when that happens, something amazing happens. You realize how many thoughts you never thought through to the end. They were just noise, old scripts, dreamed-up worlds. There were thoughts that didn't need to be finished. They just needed to be seen and let go. You should still think about them. Thinking stops being a trap and starts being a tool. You can still think and figure things out, but the need to tie every thought into a loop starts to fall apart. Stop treating your mind like a process where every case has to be decided. You have to stop expecting life to give you perfect answers. It takes trust to let go of unfinished thoughts. Believe that peace does not need to be explained. It is enough to simply be there. The space where the thoughts were can become wise again. That's why many types of meditation teach that when a thought arises, you should not follow it, but go back. Direct your attention back to your breath. Return to your body. Come back to the present moment. It's not a bad thought, but because it doesn't have to be finished before it arises. Not being able to understand a painful memory is sometimes the best way to heal. It is no longer necessary to go over it again and again. Saying that the answer may not be important is sometimes the most liberating thing that can happen. This does not mean being passive. It is about how you see it. The mind gets out of its own way. As this practice deepens over time, your inner environment changes. You begin to notice how quickly the mind wants to connect. You learn to smile about it, to take a breath, to finish the sentence without finishing it. And in that pause, insight comes through, not because something has been resolved, but because something has been let go. The unfinished gives you freedom. Someone soft, a lightness. Thoughts come up, they open up, they break off. You don't have to follow them through to the end. You are not a machine that finishes thoughts. You are aware of this. Very big, still alive, able to figure out which paths are worth taking and which are just distractions that look like they are important. Even as you rest now, you may feel a thought returning to you, a thought you want to finish, something you want to practice. Leave it there. Don't pursue it. Don't send it away. Watch it move, and let it go when it starts. That is letting go. There was no pushing or fighting. There was only the decision not to hold on. Because you made that decision, your mind is learning something that will change its life. Not every thought is a problem that needs to be solved. You don't have to open every door you're asked to. You don't have to read every word to the end. The mind can rest on things that aren't finished yet, and that is sometimes where you can think most clearly, when your mind stops trying to finish every thought, and you realize that peace does not come from completing things, but from letting go without finding a solution. Something else begins to stand out. It is quieter and stays the same. Not a single thought, nothing to feel. But there is a sound, a voice that doesn't shout, but doesn't stop very often either. A voice that narrates every event as if writing a story that no one asked for. Most people don't even know it's there. The next change begins when you become aware of your inner storyteller and take a small step back from its constant chatter. The mind has a voice that speaks even when there is nothing to say. It tells you things. It comments. It is similar. It repeats conversations and invents new ones. It tells the story of your journey to the kitchen like a video. He's going to get the glass. He's probably thirsty. He always forgets to drink water. The narrator explains, analyzes, and judges as it turns everything into a story. The voice speaks before it is asked to. It just talks. When it speaks, it builds a world out of language and thoughts. And what you believe influences your life in more ways than you know. It is not dangerous for the inner storyteller to speak. People believe it, so it is dangerous. Its stories become what it is. His decisions turn out to be right. The stories he tells you shape your image of yourself, of other people, and of the world. However, this view is not fair. It is colored by your past, your fears, your dreams, and your doubts. And when you see things this way, clarity cannot emerge. You no longer see life as it is, but as the storyteller sees it. This voice is not always loud. It does not always sound angry. Sometimes it pretends to be helpful. I need to think about it some more. I'm being realistic, or I'm ready for anything, are all things that keep you from living in the present. Because the story is not over, it keeps you in a loop where you cannot fully reach the present. It also never ends. Because the storyteller is never satisfied with just being, they always have to add or explain something. On the Buddhist path, you don't have to get rid of this speech. It wants you to see it as a process, not a person. A habit in your mind, not a master. The person telling the story is right. It's not necessary for you to agree. It is enough to know that they are speaking. You do not have to follow them. At this point, consciousness becomes freedom. Why am I always like this? Or, I can't believe she said that, are things the voice says. You pause and say, if I don't fix this, everything will fall apart. You take a step back. You see that these are not facts. That's a sentence, retellings, noises, and the time between hearing and responding to them is the time when you regain your clarity. The mind likes stories. It writes a story for every event. Every pause becomes a doubt. Every mistake is a lesson. But the real truth is that you don't have to tell stories. Life goes on with or without them. The air moves. The body lies down. The earth turns. You don't need a storyteller to support what is already happening. Your mind doesn't need a voice telling you why you exist. You are already here. That is enough. This sound gets quieter the more you hear it. It doesn't disappear right away. It can still express something, cause unease, or make things more dramatic. But the volume decreases. It becomes less urgent. The most important thing is that it no longer demands your attention as much, because you have stopped living in the story and are now resting in the silence that lies beneath it. This silence cannot be forced. It emerges when the narrator steps aside. You can hear it in the space between the words, in the moment that comes after a thought, in the breath that is not spoken. This is the realm where the voice has hidden itself. And when you go to this place, even if only for a moment, you feel something completely different. Your own experience is enough without the need for commentary. Without the storyteller, you can feel life itself. The warmth of the sun is not a figure of speech. It is simply warm. Making eye contact for a moment means nothing. It is just a connection. People do not judge how food tastes. It was just tasted. The things in life become more important than what they mean. What it is changes constantly. The storyteller tries to prevent this, to explain it, to describe it. But these rules don't work in real life. It moves, it beats, it shocks me. And when you encounter it without your thoughts getting in the way, you encounter it completely. Not from the perspective of what you think you are, but by telling the truth about what you are really going through. This is not aloofness, it is closeness, because stories separate us. The storyteller stands in the way of experiencing the moment, but the space dissolves when you stand behind the narrator. There is nothing between you and what is happening, and this closeness is not intimidating, it is liberating, because it is true. It even changes the pain when the storyteller stops telling the story. There is no reason to be sad. You can almost feel it. Fear needs no warning. You can just endure it. You no longer have to tell yourself what you feel. You just have to be with them. And the feeling moves in this togetherness. It changes. It's okay. But the story could have gone on. That's why meditation is less about the method and more about paying attention to the storyteller. I watch as the voice gets louder. I feel the urge to go with it, and I gently decide against it. Again and again. And with each decision, the sound gets weaker. Not because you turned it off, but because you didn't feed it. The storyteller will try to make you believe that it's important. If I don't think about it, I'll forget it. If I don't study, I'll fail. If I don't explain myself, they won't understand. But most of what the voice says is the same thing over and over again. Unnecessary, reactive, nothing new. It's old material. When you understand that, you understand that peace doesn't mean not having thoughts. It means not having to believe them all. After that, you will never think again. It means that the thought becomes conscious, selected, invited, and that's how thinking can be useful. Be creative. Okay. However, you can't be clear when the storyteller steps out of line because you're too busy telling the story to notice what's going on in the present. Let the word be now. Let it speak. But don't hold on to it. Don't follow it. Don't become it. Don't move. Just listen. Hold your breath. Don't leave your body. Stay in the present moment, which doesn't need to tell you anything to feel real. Because beneath the words, there is silence. And in silence, there is clarity. And now that things are clear, there is nothing more to say. Only peace. Something else begins to calm down now that the inner voice has proven to be false. Not truth, but story. Not identity, but noise disguised as direction. The place that seemed strange to us at first begins to feel a little more comfortable. It becomes less and less important to explain it. It takes longer to make mental decisions. And as things slow down, something special begins to emerge. There is a way of seeing that does not depend on approval, endorsement, or even power. A view of things that is deeply clear, even if it is not passionate. This is where serenity begins, not as apathy, but as the quiet power to see things clearly without getting upset. One of the things people misunderstand about Buddhism is equanimity. For many, it means having no feelings. When they hear the word non-reactivity, they think it means dullness or feeling nothing. The truth, however, is that equanimity is one of the most vibrant states of mind you can achieve. It is not the absence of feelings, it is the presence of stability. It is not about closing yourself off, it is about remaining open without falling apart. The mind reacts to almost everything in daily life. When you are praised, you feel better. You are judged and you fall. Waiting makes you angry. A text message makes you happy. This roller coaster ride is not only exhausting, it also makes it difficult to see clearly. Everyday things become problems and important things become dependencies. To be clear, the mind must be free of reactions at all times, because you cannot see what is happening in this moment. The answer you gave is what is shown here. This pattern is broken by equanimity. It allows the moment to be as it is, without the mind thinking about anything bad. You worry, even if it's true. It means that your worry is rooted and doesn't spread. It means that your mind isn't carried away by every feeling or thought. This insight comes from being able to feel everything without anything becoming too much. Hearing words that hurt without becoming powerless. Feeling happiness without clinging to it. Dealing with pain without fighting it. There is a balance in which you feel at peace, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing has power over you. Without reacting, the mind learns to no longer interpret every feeling as a command. Being angry does not mean you have to do something about it. Even if you are sad, it does not have to be the main topic of the day. Equanimity allows you to feel these things fully while keeping them in check, just as you let the waves pass by without trying to stop or catch them. When we act quickly, our mind is often guided by old habits, fear, ego, memory. But when there is space, when the reaction does not follow immediately after the stimulus, the mind begins to see things differently. It looks at the problem itself, not just the story about it. It sees the real person, not just an image of them. It sees the choice, not just the habit. Being calm is not being inactive, it is being awake. It is the kind of stillness that does not move. It keeps an eye on everything with the same care, openness, and attention. And when things are balanced, wisdom grows. Because now everyone has a clear picture. It's not colored by need or defense. It's not distorted by fear or anger. It's calm, not because it avoids stress, but because it can be in it without burning out. That doesn't mean you never say or do anything, that you act out of your mind, not because you have to. You respond instead of reacting. Because of this little thing, everything changes. When you are there, people's reactions change. Fear shapes people's actions. One clears the way, the other clouds it. Serenity also helps with your feelings. You don't have to fall over when guilt plagues you. You don't have to dispel doubts when they arise. You can see them. You have them. You take a deep breath, and it passes. The key to mental balance is to let feelings flow through you without suppressing or pulling them in. That way, you can see clearly. Serenity gives relationships more depth. You are no longer dependent on other people behaving in a certain way to make you happy. You no longer try to control, correct, or prove things. You start to listen. You start to respect how they do things. You stop seeing every change in their mood as a sign of how valuable you are. Love can live in this place. It allows people to talk about things without having to defend themselves. Serenity is also important in spiritual practice. Without it, growth is like a roller coaster. You feel like you've failed when you go from focused to confused in a matter of hours. But when you have serenity, you treat every state the same. You don't cling to stillness or try not to get distracted. You just come back. That comeback becomes stronger than any mood. That doesn't mean you let nothing in your life impress you. It means you don't give up when things get tough. It's okay to feel that way. You don't become that way. And that makes you more human, not less. Because now, your existence is no longer dependent on how well you perform. It is stable because it does not fight against what is. Peace of mind is also something like the body's defense system. It prevents every thought, event, or stress around you from affecting you. It helps you get through difficult times without getting stuck in them. When this becomes normal, your life will be less chaotic, not because the chaos disappears, but because your clarity no longer depends on peace. You can learn to maintain this inner balance by being mindful, by observing how the reaction increases and deciding to pause, by breathing through the pain instead of running away from it, by allowing joy without having to hold on to it, because you know that everything changes, even the need to react. As you become calmer, your mind begins to trust itself, not because it knows the answers, but because it doesn't freak out when it doesn't know them. When you believe someone, you feel calm. That calmness makes things clear. It leads to knowledge, but not the kind you read in books. It's the kind you feel when you don't know what to do. You should stop letting yourself be pulled in all directions. You should stop confusing your feelings with your goal. You should stop thinking that passion is synonymous with truth. You begin to see life as the sky sees the weather, open and vast, unaltered by the storms that pass through. If you feel something right now, a doubt, a dream, a memory, let it come to the surface. Leave it alone. Give it up. It's fine the way it is. There's no reason to chase after it. Look at it. Feel it. Do nothing. That is peace of mind. That is balance that makes things clear. Not apathy, not detachment. It is simply open and steady awareness. Life is not running away from you. Finally, you are saying it like it is. The next step is not a new method, but a new perspective. This time, equanimity does not mean indifference, but the calm power to feel without getting carried away. One that makes everything it touches clear. One that doesn't want you to give up on life, but helps you see it better. One of the most important ideas in Buddhism is so fundamental that people often overlook it. But when they do, it changes everything they think about. This idea is anicca, impermanence, and it doesn't just make thoughts lighter when used as a mental filter, it frees the mind from the weight that holds it back in stories, answers, and attachments. There is no arguing about impermanence in philosophy. The simple truth is that everything changes. Every sound fades. All our feelings change. Every thought arises and disappears again. Every connection changes over time. When the day begins, nothing remains as it was. However, the mind forgets this again and again. It treats things that are not fixed as if they were. It turns short-term problems into long-term ones. It acts as if what it holds on to will remain there forever. It is not the event itself, but the thought that it will continue that is the starting point of suffering. The mind clings to things like identities, roles, feelings, people, and moments, as if it could freeze them in time. But nothing stays the same, not even the person who tried to hold on to it. This is not sad. When you can see it clearly, it is freedom. When you think about impermanence, you see every moment, every thought, and every feeling as something that has already passed. Not in a dark or distant way, but in a very present way. Because the mind becomes less rigid when something is seen as short-lived. It stops trying to control, hold on to, or fix things. It begins to let go. And when you let go, clarity returns. When you look at something like pain through the lens of eternity, it is unbearable. This will never end, you may say, but when you understand that things change, they are easier to bear. You may still feel strong even though you say, "This will pass." But the fear of it fades, and that relaxation is often the first step toward healing. This perspective also allows you to see joy more clearly. It becomes purer when you don't hold on to it. Because you know it will pass, you don't worry so much about losing it. It's still beautiful. It gives you more color, because now it's being lived fully and not saved up. Thoughts come and go, but the mind clings to them, invents stories about them, and treats them as if they were eternal facts. What could possibly go wrong? That's probably what they meant when they said that. I'll always be this way. These things are not always true. They are only temporary forms. They lose their solidity when viewed through the lens of change. The thought arises. You can see it. You don't chase it. It disappears. There is no stability in anything, not even in your idea of yourself. One moment you are sure of yourself. The next, you are not sure. One day, you feel calm. The next, you are angry. But none of these things are you. They are states that pass through you. Trying to hold on to any of them is like reaching out to catch the sun. The moment doesn't have to last. The mind's job is to tell the body that it doesn't have to. Everything changes. Jobs, relationships, your memory, your physical strength, and even your deepest values. But that doesn't mean life is in danger. It makes it real. Things are broken, so they don't last. They pass because that's how they are. And when that isn't fought against, a quiet strength grows. You're ready to deal with anything, not because you've become tougher, but because you no longer expect things that are meant to change to stay the same. Being emotionally numb doesn't mean using mortality as a filter. It means making feelings stronger. Feeling without holding on, loving without worrying about loss. Doing something without having a promise. You stop fighting life and start going with it. Even the quiet times of the day, the time between tasks and the breathing space between thoughts, are constantly changing. Being enough means that the mind no longer needs to be more than it is. It becomes more present. Peace is less a destination than a journey. When the mind does not view what it holds onto as permanent, it becomes easier to let go. You don't have to reject what you put out there. You just have to realize that holding on tighter won't prevent it from shifting. This also applies to old thoughts, bad habits, and goals that are no longer relevant. They have given you something that is no longer you, and the mind that learns to accept change no longer feels bad about it. Humility is the other side of change. It helps you remember that nothing you have built will last forever. Not your reputation, not your job, not your possessions. But humility is liberating. It makes things easier. It frees you from the clutter in your mind that comes from wanting to be important and remember or keep everything. There is no coldness in this clarity. It is beautiful. It says, "Feel this fully now, because it will not last." This becomes a realization that makes pride, jealousy, and fear less powerful, because all these feelings come from the illusion of a fixed self, a fixed outcome, or a fixed value. But once you understand that things change, these myths begin to crumble, and all that remains is kindness, being there. Thank you, Grace. The thought of change also makes us more grateful. No, not the forced kind. The kind that comes when you know something won't last. The feel of a hand, the air in your chest, the sound of rain. These things are not taken for granted when they are considered fleeting. They become sacred, not because they are perfect, but because they only last for a short time. When you look at things this way, even difficult things become easier to cope with, because you won't be afraid that what you're going through defines you when you know it will end. Stop making your discomfort your identity. You don't allow the storm because you want it, but because you know it will pass quickly. That's why change is such a powerful filter. It removes things that aren't important. The fact that things keep going shows you what's real. Remembering this makes you feel free, not from life, but from fantasy. In this moment, as you rest, let this truth sink in. What you're feeling right now won't last. Everything is in motion. The calm, the pain, the thought that wants to stay, and so on. Allow them to move. Change it. Stop it. Don't chase what's going away. Stand still. Go with the flow. Breathe deeply. Accept that everything is already passing, and that's okay. You're not giving up what you love. You learn how to hold on to them without forcing them to stay. Now, that change is no longer seen as a threat, but as a filter, something to be sad about, but which makes things clearer. The mind begins to open up in a new way. It is no longer so crowded with resistance, not so focused on control. It is more willing to accept things as they are, but life goes on, even as this understanding grows. Things move quickly, the noise remains. This is where a stronger kind of strength is needed. One that doesn't need silence to stay balanced. One that can hold its own in the storm without being overtaken by it. Next, you won't be able to escape the chaos. You'll have to stand still while everything else moves. Conditions that are just right don't bring clarity. It comes when you find stability in things that change. It's not true that you can only find peace in empty rooms with light and pillows. Movement is the only way to find true inner peace. It means keeping your feet on the ground, even when everything else seems uncertain. This is where the practice of being the calm eye in the storm begins. In the midst of a storm, there is always a calm spot where the wind cannot reach. Even when the storm rages around it, the heart remains calm. This is what mindfulness does in the midst of the chaos of life. The noise is still there. It will not spin with it. So the practice is to learn how to return to this center again and again, even when something else arises. This is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending that you don't feel anything. It's about being better able to feel the pull without being pulled. Even in a noisy place, in a difficult job, or during a tense conversation, you can feel something inside you that doesn't want to move. It's not far to that center. That's what the comments are about. Below the thought, at the bottom of the turbulent waves, and it gets stronger every time you pause and return to it. As a first step, find out what takes you away from your center. Some people need it right away, the need to fix, solve, or act immediately. For some, it's too much stimulation, like too much noise, too many opinions, or too much stress. And for many people, it's worries, doubts, and self-judgment. But the idea is the same, no matter where it comes from. Clarity returns when the mind stops chasing every signal and begins to calm down. The first thing that helps is often a deep breath. It's always there, not because it's magical. No matter what's going on around you, your breath is a way to get inside. But it's not about escaping with your breath. It's about using it to stabilize things. A slow inhale, a slow exhale. Already, the storm seems further away. It's still there, but it's no longer inside you. Your body can also be an anchor. Notice how heavy your feet are on the floor when your thoughts start racing, how good your hands feel, how your spine is shaped. These are not annoying things. They serve as reminders. They remind you that there is a place inside you that does not move, even though your thoughts are moving and the world is screaming. And every time you go back, the storm is no longer there. Awareness is also a point. Not the things that are in your mind, but the consciousness that sees them. No one ever moves in this place. It never goes against itself. It never becomes fearful. Everything changes when you rest in the observer and let yourself fall beneath the story. You are aware that noise is happening, but the noise is not you. You are not the storm. You are the sky through which it passes. Training yourself to pause, both physically and mentally, is what it means in real life. Being aware of when reacting wants to take over, feeling the need to respond quickly, to defend, to judge, and to correct. You don't follow it, you just pause. You take a deep breath, you come back. This pause is not a sign of weakness. It is wise. It is the moment that opens up everything else. This inner center can even be achieved in places that seem chaotic, such as stores, apartments, and busy streets. It is not necessary to be quiet to find it. You just have to be ready and willing to return. To not get lost in the stress of the moment. To stay in your place, even when the outside world tells you to get up and fight. You should do the same when the storm is mental, when sadness, anger, or fear quickly rise up. Feel it, Give it a name, but stick with what you see. Hold on to what doesn't have to fall apart. This is not avoidance. This is strength. Because this is the only place where you can truly respond and not just react. Staying grounded is also a physical thing. It helps to move more slowly, move deliberately, move more slowly, speak more slowly. Take your time when eating. When these small changes happen, they teach the nervous system to slow down. This retraining tells the brain, there is space here. You are not being chased. You can breathe. That doesn't mean being quiet or distant. It means becoming clear, being aware of when to act and when to rest, how to talk and when not to talk. It means you no longer have to react to every wave which saves your energy. The main goal is to stay balanced so that when movement occurs, it is clear, sharp, and synchronized. The process doesn't break down when mistakes are made, which they will be. Don't try to stay exactly in the middle. You just have to come back. Every comeback makes you stronger. You'll become more stable over time as you catch yourself being pulled into the storm and pull back. This habit will become your new normal over time. No, not as a show. In a certain way, it is what it is. You can deal with chaos in a way that does more than just keep the peace. It makes you more focused, because you start to see things that other people don't see. You start to hear what is being said, not just the background noise. You start to act from a deeper place. Some people sense that too. Being with me is like medicine, not because you've withdrawn, but because you're no longer amplifying the fear. The world will keep turning, people will keep changing, emotions will keep going up and down, but the way you approach things now is different. You don't want to change the wind. To stand firm in that wind, you go through the steps. That is the eye that is still. That is the center that has not moved. It is not too far away. It is right here, in the pause between breaths. It is not necessary for everything to be still. You just need to stop amplifying the storm. What comes next is not more chaos, now that you know how to put yourself in the storm, not by controlling it, but by becoming the stillness at its heart, its history, behavioral patterns. After a while, when the body is still and the breath slows down, memories from the past come back to the surface. That's when the deeper layers can speak. While the storms on the outside may be over, the storms on the inside often last longer. They don't always come in the form of stories either. They can show up as a mood, as not wanting, because the stress has no clear cause. Mindfulness, or sati, is more than just being present at this point. It is a way to discover the meaning of loops that were written long ago but are still playing out now. Mindfulness is not just a way to focus. It helps you discover what is hidden by your habits. It is not enough to just notice what is going on. It is important to know where it comes from. The breath may keep you in the present, but what it really does is stabilize you for the undoing of what happened in the past, the old patterns that shaped your current reactions, your voice, your resistance, and your emotional base. It is possible to remember the pain. You keep it, not always in memory, but in the way people act, in small effects. Inner rules like never trust, don't speak, or stay in control didn't make sense. They came from having done those things. Even if the event wasn't fully felt, it was felt in some way. There is something unfinished that keeps coming back to you through thoughts that are similar to yours but not rooted in the present. That's what sati finds out, the parts that make up the behavior. Why you withdraw when you're happy and where it comes from. Why tensions arise in harmless moments. Why you have so many questions before something begins. These aren't just tendencies. They sound like echoes. As long as they can be seen, they determine what happens. Thought patterns that keep coming up must have roots. It was no coincidence that the voice that kept telling you, "This won't work," or "You're not ready," it was changed by something, an event, a message, or a moment that wasn't thought through. Mindfulness isn't about silencing that voice. It's about sitting down next to it and really listening to it to find out where it comes from. You get stuck in old habits that you can't shake off. You have to let them go completely. Not just make them smaller, without giving a reason. It's not just intellectual observation, but a felt one. It means paying attention to thoughts when they arise, and not just asking, "What does this thought mean?" But where does it come from? Instead, it's out of interest. For example, you're unsure about something small, like a chat, a message, or a change. You pause, you take a deep breath. You stop reacting and focus your attention on your body. You feel the tension, the way you're breathing, and the sensation. You stay. Now you realize that it's not about the present moment. This feeling is familiar. It is old. It could be the same fear you had when you walked into a classroom at age 12, or the same silence you kept when someone was not interested in what you had to say. Even after many years, the noise is still there. Mindfulness, on the other hand, makes it clear. At this point, something softens, because the design is no longer hidden. You've seen it. And the things that are seen begin to change, not through learning, but through kindness. One reason why the present is healing is that it frees us from the past and allows us to live with the parts of ourselves that are stuck in the past. Sati is in no hurry. She looks around slowly, again and again. She gives you space to feel, not to fixate, every time an old thought or story resurfaces. This makes the loop less powerful, not by force, but through kindness. You can see the tendency. You stick with it. You can see how it moves. You learn what it looks like, and over time, it no longer has power over you. For this kind of power, you have to be patient, because the noises don't disappear at specific times. Some people come back again and again and demand more attention, but every time you encounter them without fighting them, you get some of your clarity back. A little bit of your voice, a piece of your power. This has a lot to do with the body, because many sounds are physical. Just like the throat and the chest, they live there. Even if the mind has forgotten, the body still knows. Sati wants you to pay attention to the language of your body without trying to understand it. If you feel heaviness in your chest, you may not need an answer. Maybe it just needs space to move. Maybe you don't need to name the pain in your jaw. Maybe it just needs to be seen without moving. Healing happens when you stay, not when you solve problems. By letting out the part of you that was never allowed to speak. Saying, "I am here now," does not mean agreeing with it or believing everything it says. I see you. And when it does, the mind stops fighting. The loop stops spinning. And a new answer is open to you. That doesn't mean the past is gone. It means it stops getting in the way of the moment. Because once you see it, the echo can no longer hide in your decisions. It no longer whispers doubt into your happiness or fear into your peace. It becomes part of the story, no longer the person telling it. From then on, your life changes. Not because your story has changed, but because you have experienced it differently. You no longer need to hide it. You no longer need to show anything to get out of it. You don't try to rewrite it. It's just that you don't live it out. That is the true power of awareness. It's not just respect, it's freedom. Because it is attention that makes memories less sharp. It allows people to feel sadness without reliving it. It creates space for the future without involving the past. You don't have to examine every part of your past. You don't have to find the cause of every echo. You just have to be there. A steady, deep presence that listens without getting upset, that perceives without understanding, that allows without breaking down. That's because when you face the past in this way, the future no longer looks like a threat. It transforms into space. And in that space, new patterns can form, not as a show, but as a reflection of who you are right now. Stay right here. Listen again. Feel for a while. Let the sounds rise. Allow them to speak. Let them go. They are not what happened. Now that you know, you are ready to listen. Something begins to change deep inside after the past has been heard without judgment or fear, but simply observed with the calm constancy of awareness. It becomes quieter in the loops. The patterns begin to slip away. Things that previously pulled the present backward become easier. However, the question often arises, what if I let go too much? Will I stop caring? Will I be less close when I stop attaching myself? This fear makes one of the most important Buddhist teachings, letting go, difficult to understand. People often confuse letting go with mental separation, but it is not the end of love. It is the beginning of a more open and deeper form of love. There is a fine line between being detached and being disconnected. One lets go of attachments and opens the heart. Fear causes the other person to close it. One is based on being present, the other on escape. Outwardly, however, they can look the same. Nothing but silence, space, and calm. What distinguishes them is the goal behind them. This goal becomes clearer over time and makes it easier to achieve mental clarity. Detaching from life does not mean running away from it. It means moving toward it without having to hold on to anything. It means feeling things completely and letting them go without trying to hold on to them. It means not being afraid of losing joy. It means feeling sadness without getting lost in the story. It means being there without having it. On the other hand, disconnecting is a way to protect yourself. You can hear it. If I worry too much, I'll get hurt. You avoid, withdraw, and freeze. This leads to not wanting to stay safe, but it skips life because it wants to avoid pain. Numbness arises from being disconnected. Emotional health is restored by detachment. This difference is important because it affects how clear things are. The mind no longer receives accurate knowledge when it is disconnected. It sorts everything according to how far away something is. It stops paying attention to details and listening. But in the Buddhist concept of separation, the mind becomes sharper. It can hear better. It does not see what it wants to see, but only what is there. It does not need to change the truth. It comes directly to it. A feeling of love arises from detachment. It allows people to connect without expecting anything. You can be with other people without expecting them to behave in a certain way. You can love without the way that love is accepted affecting your peace. This does not mean being cold. This kind of kindness is stronger because it is not based on power. It is based on freedom. It is helpful to look at how attachment leads to misunderstanding in order to fully understand detachment. When you focus on results, you see things less clearly. You start to see people through the lens of what you expect them to be, rather than how they really are. Instead of hearing words, you start to understand them through fear. Because of this connection, it is difficult to think clearly, to tell the truth, to act with knowledge instead of need. This space is freed up by detachment. It makes you think, because you are no longer dependent on every moment to prove who you are. You no longer have to wait for the next thing to go well before you feel better. It's not worth fixing something that wasn't broken. Being clear doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you can feel things without getting sidetracked. You can be sad without feeling powerless. You can celebrate without committing yourself. You don't have to forget in order to forgive. That's fairness. That's where the heart can remain open without becoming too full. This is particularly pronounced when it comes to relationships. Attachment can lead to possessiveness, jealousy, and the fear of being left alone. Detachment, on the other hand, lets love live. It gives each person the chance to be whole. It stays within the lines, in honor of change. It doesn't force anyone to do what you want them to do. Detachment also makes everyday life easier. You no longer have to implement every plan exactly as you imagined it. You are no longer afraid of being interrupted. You don't worry so much about deadlines, because you don't base your self-worth on what others think of you. Now you no longer try to swim against the tide, but simply let yourself drift. Detachment, on the other hand, often remains hidden. It says, "I don't care," even though you have to care to avoid pain. It says, "I'm fine." But there is something more important that needs to be recognized. It helps us stay alive, but it blocks our ability to get close to others. It calms the mind, but in a dull, not peaceful way. That's why separation cannot help clarity grow. It is based on avoiding things rather than perceiving them. Presence is necessary to move from separation to detachment. To begin, see the difference. Then return to being open. It doesn't happen all at once. It progresses breath by breath. When you shut yourself off, you catch yourself. You breathe deeply. You relax. You don't have to connect. You can no longer run away from it. The body can recognize things before the mind does. You can feel yourself withdrawing, becoming more rigid, and going backwards. At this point, you should not push yourself, but pause and ask yourself, am I separating from myself, or am I detaching from myself? It will be peaceful to let go if it is a separation. When there is a lack of connection, there is rigidity, stress, or avoidance. Distancing yourself can actually bring you closer to other people, because you listen when you're not trying to change them or guess what they're going to do next. You can see them better. You meet them where they are, not where you think they should be based on your fear. That's why detachment makes you compassionate, because you can love someone even if they are messy, absent, or changing. And that same kindness turns around and back on itself. You let go of the need to be perfect, because they had to be better by a certain date. From the idea that being clear means never getting lost again, it's as if you become your own constant presence. You no longer insist that your feelings have meaning. You can feel them. You no longer need to harmonize your thoughts. just look at them. That's being free, not walking away. But there is space. In that space, you don't feel alone. It makes things easier. Not because things aren't important, but because you know you can't hold on to them. More things happen to you, not fewer. You get more involved, not less, because there's nothing blocking your view. There's no need to control every outcome. There's no reason to hold on to everything. With this perspective, dreams, goals, and creativity also change. Your work is better when you take a break. Your goal is not to impress. You don't do things to show off. You say something. You help. You give. This makes things easier, freer, and more true to yourself. Now, stay here, in this space between holding on and letting go. In the middle, between holding on and letting go. Don't let go of your caring. Let it breathe. Allow your personality to grow, but don't hold on to it. Open your heart, but don't move your roots. Because separation does not mean that the relationship is over. It removes the noise so that love can come through. The mind begins to feel a kind of peace. It may not know when the heart is open without holding on, when the connection does not depend on having something, and when worry does not have to be in charge. Something that is not empty and feels hollow, but is quiet and feels full. There is less pressure where there used to be pressure. There is calm where there used to be speed. And more information does not come from this silence. It is neither a new idea nor a new understanding to dive into. It is older and deeper than that, an understanding that does not need to be built up, but only revealed. It begins with the mind finally finding the courage to stop thinking so much about what it has been putting off for so long. Nowadays, the mind is very busy, constantly in motion, lots of information, and quick comparisons. Even on the spiritual path, these things can get in the way. There is always a new idea to understand, a new point of view to combine, or an answer to find. But most of the time, the wisest things happen when the noise stops. The idea does not come as a breakthrough. After being interpreted many times, it finally proves to be what it always was. It is not stupid to have a simple mind. It is not about not knowing so much. It is about knowing less in order to see better. It is about returning to what is clear, simple, and true before you start thinking about it. This lightness does not take away the depth. It brings it to the surface. It reveals the vastness that our minds try to condense into something safe and controllable. The idea that collecting thoughts leads to mental depth is not true. Becoming clearer does not mean getting more things. It means getting rid of the things that stand in the way. When the mind stops searching for more to understand, it encounters life as it really is. What you experience in this encounter is difficult to explain and impossible to fake. Being quiet is not the same as thinking about it. When you think about love and when you feel it, in the space between talking about the present and having it. The mind likes to talk. It needs to explain, compare, and argue. But to get to the truth, the mind sometimes has to shut down, and the truth can only be felt. This is not the end of being smart, but the beginning of being wise. To achieve spiritual depth, you don't have to do a lot of mental gymnastics. You just have to be honest, be quiet, just live. It means being willing to stop trying to understand everything and just be with what is. Many people believe that they have to understand everything before they can find peace, but most of the time it is rest that reveals what no amount of thinking can reveal. It's not because they're hard to understand that deeper truths feel unattainable. It's because they're dead. Deep inside, we have ideas about how life should be. Underneath the ideas we learned in school lie roles we believe we have to play and goals that were never really ours. These layers become more and more solid the more we try to think our way to freedom. Being simple is bold because it cuts off all paths to escape. It makes you aware of this breath, this feeling, this moment. And in this honesty, something emerges that has nothing to do with solving a problem or becoming better. It has to do with being there, with truth, with being. You don't need proof for this kind of knowledge. That's all it says. It doesn't need to be confirmed right away. You can feel it in your body, in the space between your thoughts, and in the way your heart softens when you stop trying to force understanding and just let it happen. Being simple clears your head so you can hear what has been there all along. That doesn't mean thinking is bad. There are times when you need to think. It helps us move forward, talk to each other, and build things. However, when the mind is trapped in thinking, it cannot see things in a deeper way. At that point, it begins to live in commentary rather than experience. It stops participating and starts reporting. A simple mind makes the opposite more likely. It tells you to stop describing and start noticing. Stop controlling your feelings and let them flow. Stop trying to make sense of things and start seeing the meaning that is already there in every breath, every sound, and every feeling. This results in a calm certainty. You don't leave because you know everything, but because you don't need to. Standing still is a sign of strength. Pausing can be powerful. When you're not trying to make things better than they are, it's clear to just be there. This is not detachment. It is closeness. So the less you think about what you are experiencing, the more directly you can encounter it. You can taste food better. You can hear songs better. You have a stronger sense of closeness. You begin to understand that you have spent a large part of your life in the story your mind has created about your life, rather than living it. When you keep things simple, it's easier to do things. When there's less noise, it's easier to make decisions. When there are fewer private debates, communication is better. When people aren't mentally confused, boundaries are easier to see. Stop questioning everything you do, not because it's perfect, but because it's in line with the present. Trust what emerges. Even mental ideas begin to fade. The words that used to be important are no longer needed. You no longer need to say what silence is. You live it. You no longer try to explain what love is. You give it. You don't show wisdom. Your way of dealing with people shows it without words. It is no longer a mystery to know less to understand more. It is now a way of life. You begin to understand that most of the answers have always been there, hidden beneath the questions. Amidst all the searching, most of the peace was always there. The most important link was always there, even when there were stories of separation. Giving up intellectual depth does not make you boring. It helps you see. It brings you back to the air, to your body, your heart, and the silence. You don't have to think about these things. You have to take care of them, return to them, and trust them. Part of you already knows this as you read these words. not because you were told, but because you remember. You have always known that simplicity is not synonymous with smallness, even if you hid it from yourself. It means a lot of space. Let go of the clothes, let go of the work, let the chatter fade away. To go deeper, you don't need to think anymore. What you need is less of what distracts you from what is already there. And that's not enough. It's everything. Something deeper is beginning to surface now that the layers of thinking have faded away, and simplicity is once again seen as a path to clarity, not a sign of stupidity, not in the form of new ideas, but in the way time seems to pass, not so fast, better, not so important. This step is not a mistake. When you let go of the mental pressure to solve problems, keep things under control, and always move on to the next step, this is exactly what happens. And as this relationship with time softens, the next lesson emerges, not as a new habit, but as a change in our view of things. Buddhists have been pointing out this change for hundreds of years. Most of the time, there is no real urgency. It has been created, and getting rid of the false sense of urgency is one of the fastest ways to regain focus, calm, and presence. Urgency isn't always about what's happening right now. It has to do with what the mind thinks should be happening instead. It shortens the word. The present moment becomes increasingly scarce. There's a phrase that says, "That's not enough." You need to move faster, do more, or fix something. This gives the impression that peace lies on the other side of hard work, that happiness will come when this last thing is done. But that moment never comes. Because you have to hurry, the finish line keeps moving further and further away. This is what Buddhists think about when they think about time. Advertising won't work. Direct knowledge will. It draws attention to the experience of the present moment itself, not to the thoughts that accompany it. The idea that time is running out begins to fade when the mind focuses entirely on the present moment. Breathing slows down. Stress disappears. The mind realizes that the panic was not about the work itself, but about how quickly it should be done. Urgency makes you feel important. It acts like worry, duty, and ambition. Most of the time, however, it is only fear that comes to the surface, fear of falling behind, of not being good enough, or of missing out on something. For some reason, this fear makes the mind run faster, but running will never bring peace. Only being present brings peace. Being present cannot be rushed. When Buddhism talks about time, it does not say that it does not move. It only frees it from its oppression. It shows that people always think about the future. It is always possible to remember the past, and that the here and now is the only place where things really happen. Time does not have to be treated from this point of view. It has to be done. In this meeting, time no longer plays a role. You should therefore not stop thinking or planning. It means that you no longer think that you will reach your goal faster by running, because rushing makes it difficult to think clearly. It leads to more mistakes. Perception deteriorates. Decisions that are not so easy become crises. Clarity cannot function when time is pressing, because you don't have time to listen when things are urgent. It's not lazy to slow down. Of course it is. It means letting your nervous system do its job. It means thinking before you act. It means paying attention to your body's signals instead of ignoring them. The best thing you can usually do when something seems important is to pause. Take a single breath to really feel what is there, because that one pause often reveals that the stress does not come from the event itself, but from how the mind thinks about it. Being aware of Buddhism gives you strength. It creates some distance between the stimulus and the response. It allows time to expand just long enough for wisdom to enter. You don't stop acting, you just slow down. You still care about them. Stop being so anxious. You create space for calm understanding instead of a chaotic reaction. This change also shows how often people use haste to feel important. "I have so much to do" becomes a valuable badge of honor. "I'm behind" becomes a cause for concern. But the truth is, pushing things forward doesn't accomplish anything. It only robs you of your strength. It exhausts you more quickly, and what you accomplish under stress usually feels constricted. You stop participating in life when time becomes something you have to race against. You start doing it too. You treat every hour like a business. Every minute is a threat. But if you're a Buddhist, time isn't chasing you. It's happening all around you. You shouldn't try to beat it. You should move with it. That doesn't mean we give up structure or goals. It means returning to the present moment as the only solid foundation. It means realizing that the truth isn't waiting for tomorrow. It's about your ability to give your all right now, even when you're busy, even when time is running out. It's possible to get the work done. It's possible to have the meeting. The work can be done, but you won't have the fire inside you that drives you. This change also changes the way you see other people. You no longer expect others to keep up with your pace when you no longer feel rushed. You learn to wait your turn. A better understanding, more willingness to wait. Patience is not a sign of weakness. It is a gift. It says, "I see you beyond the speed of your output." And that space helps you feel better. It invites other people to be there by simply being there yourself. Priorities become clearer when you are less in a hurry. Don't try to do too many things at once. You have to stop making noise all the time. You start to choose wisely, and those choices consume all your energy, not just a few scraps left over from the hustle and bustle of the day. Your breathing also changes. It becomes deeper. It calms down. The body knows when it has stopped fighting against time. When you are still, you start to move in a different way. You talk differently. You even rest in a different way. Now you no longer have to work for peace and quiet. You respect it. This is how Buddhists understand time, not by thinking about it in general terms, but by living it. It proves that the clock is real, but fear is not. That deadlines are real, but stress is not necessary. That you can approach your life in a different way, one that does not rush it. Let time be as it is now, while you sit here. Allow this moment to last longer. Wait for the next event. Slow down your thoughts about what comes next and return to what is now. There is no need to rush with this breath. In this truth lies freedom. There is no need for more time. There is no need for so much war. The mind is ready for something more subtle. Now that the illusion of urgency has subsided, the war with time is over, and each breath has been given space again. The tone has changed, not the speed. That's because there is still a field in the mind, even when time and stress are gone. A plant always grows in this field. What it grows depends on where the energy moves and where the attention is. Thoughts do not always deserve to grow. You do not have to water every seed. This is where right effort begins, not as an attempt, but as a decision to nourish what is clear, calm, and true, and not to worry about the rest. The Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path consists of 8 parts. One of them is right effort. It's not about how hard you try. You don't have to try harder. It's not about getting things done or being perfect. That's what alignment is all about. It's about the question, where is your energy going? Not just the energy of your mind, but also that of your body. Pay attention to yourself. Be mindful. Talk to yourself. Thoughts constantly come into our minds. Some are useful. Some are unbiased. Some are very bad for you. However, most people treat them all the same. They all think the same way, believe the same things, and give every thought the same amount of time. The right effort stops this. It tells you that you don't have to feed every thought that comes to you. Not every seed needs to be watered. You don't have to let every story grow. This kind of mental clarity doesn't come from thinking more, but from thinking more consciously. It's not about taking control of your mind. It's about putting it together, not in a strict way, but in a wise and kind way. You learn to recognize when a thought is making you tense, anxious, or confused. And you gently ask, is it worth continuing with this? Do I want to make this path stronger? Awareness is the first step toward right effort. You can't choose if you can't see. It means catching yourself as soon as a thought arises. It could be a worry, or it could be a decision. It could be a dream. It could be a habit you do without thinking about it. But right effort gives us a pause, a breath, a moment to decide, do I want to make it more alive? If the answer is no, this is easy to do. Not simple, but not difficult either. You don't resist the thought. You don't fight it. You don't try to get rid of it. You stop feeding it. The connection changes. You choose another topic. You let the thought disappear like a fire you can't see. This is not suppression. Being mindful is smart. It means choosing what you want to grow. The truth is that every thought you feed it becomes stronger. Every loop you think about becomes deeper. Every time you do the same thing, it gets faster. But the opposite is also true. Why not feed what you don't feed? What you don't practice will fade away. The thoughts of kindness, clarity, gratitude, and patience that you choose to grow will become your new normal. That's the yard. This is the washing machine. Right effort helps you take care of your inner world like a garden. You don't have to pull out every weed by hand. You simply stop watering them. You let grow what you focus your attention on. Slowly, your inner landscape changes, not because of willpower, but because of wise choices. The Buddha spoke about right effort in 4 different ways. The first is to prevent bad thoughts from arising. This is a precautionary measure. It means being aware of your habits, triggers, and the places where you often feel confused, and staying away from the things that trigger those feelings. Not because you don't want to live, but to maintain peace. The second is to let go of bad ideas that have already arisen. The answer is here. When you have that thought, you can clearly recognize it and decide not to think it any further. Maybe you are almost done with a decision. Maybe you are already fighting with yourself. You can still stop with right effort, but even so, go back to clarity anyway. The third part is picking up good thoughts that haven't come up yet. Now we've come to the planting stage. If you want to lift someone up, think thoughts that are true and think thoughts that make the heart feel better. Give thanks, forgive, be interested, be kind. These thoughts don't always come naturally. Sometimes you have to invite them. The fourth is to preserve and strengthen the good that has already emerged. This is the time of nurturing. You take care of what is already growing in your mind because you know how valuable it is. You wait for it. Repetition makes it stronger. In this way, clarity becomes a way of life, not just a moment in time. Right effort also changes how you deal with bad things. You no longer feel bad when you have negative thoughts. Instead, you see them as an opportunity to change your mind. You remember that your mind is not always right, so you don't feel overwhelmed by it. What you feel is not always true. Furthermore, you don't have to follow every thought to its conclusion. This makes the mind feel better. Not because all thoughts are good, but because each one is chosen. It's not about stopping feeling, but about stopping telling yourself the thoughts that hold you back. This makes a big difference in the long run. It changes the way you do things. It changes the way you do things. It creates peace, not because everything is fine, but because you have stopped feeding what is not fine. Right effort also makes you humble. When you start looking at it, your thoughts are mostly just responses. How often does your mind make you feel stressed for no reason? You're not trying to control what's happening around you, but you're taking responsibility for what's going on inside you, not to find fault, but to give you strength. You also learn to be patient, because some thoughts don't disappear right away. Some have been nurtured over many years. They will come back. They will test you, but their roots will grow weaker each time you don't water them. That's the practice. Not doing it right, but being consistent. Not fighting what is, but not allowing what doesn't serve you to grow. The thoughts that want your energy are ready now. Some will try to take you back in time. Some will try to make you think about the future, even though it hasn't happened yet. Some people will whisper fear into your ear. Some people will say they don't believe in it. You can still do something. You are not dependent on their speed. You can choose. And now, which ones are worth your time? Do you have time, your life? Because you become what you think about. With every seed of thought you water, you plant a new one. Every time you pause, perceive, and decide, you make room for something better to grow. Don't try to control your mind. You just need to stop giving it what clouds it. Now that right effort has shown us the power of focused attention, the garden of the mind has been well tended, and we are now aware of which thoughts we fuel. There is a deeper level of clarity just waiting to reveal itself. Not through hard work, but through letting go. Not by giving the mind more structure, but by realizing that it doesn't need any structure at all. What comes next is not about improving your inner world. It has to do with seeing through it. And this seeing begins with sunyata, which means emptiness, and is one of the most important ideas in Buddhist thought. A word that sounds empty at first, but when understood correctly, reveals the greatest range of freedom. Being empty does not mean that there is nothing. It does not mean that life has no meaning, that feelings are not real, or that life is cold. That is not nothingness. That is called nihilism. As it really is, Sunyata is the knowledge that nothing exists on its own, not your thoughts, feelings, roles, or even your sense of self. Everything arises in connection with something else. Everything is interconnected. Everything changes, is influenced by conditions, and depends on other things. Even if that sounds vague, the feeling of nothingness is very useful. It changes the way everything is stored in the mind. It frees you from the need to define something, cling to it, and make something solid out of something that is constantly changing. It is not the truth that is lost, but the truth that is distorted. It means being free to encounter life without getting caught up in it. Most of the time, we don't suffer because we are in pain, but because we think that what we feel, what we fear, or what we desire must remain the same. The mind wants things to stay in their place. It needs something strong to lean on. But that is not what life gives us. Things change. Everything changes over time. No one stays the same. It is not a tragedy to feel empty. It is the truth. When your mind has a strong belief about something, such as who you are, who someone else is, or how life should be, it begins to fight against everything that contradicts that belief, and that resistance becomes pain. But the mind stops holding on when it realizes that nothing is really set in stone. This letting go is not idle either. It is powerful, because it allows you to focus on other things. It opens the mind. It allows clarity to arise where there was previously confusion. Something called sunyata says that things look real, but they are not really real. Like a wave in the ocean, it has form, movement, and power. But it has no life of its own. It is based on water. It depends on the wind. It depends on reasons and circumstances. The way you think is the same. Your feelings, your thoughts, your whole character goes up and down like that wave. To understand emptiness, you can't ignore what you feel. Being able to recognize that what you feel is not you. It's not something you'll always have. It's an event passing through consciousness. You don't need to hide it, but you also don't need to connect with it. It doesn't have to tell you every story. You just have to look at it. This seeing makes things clearer in a new way. When you see nothingness, you can't be fooled by the surface. It no longer freaks out when a mood changes. It can no longer recognize when a joy goes away. It no longer defines itself by the roles it plays, the things it has done, or the fears it has had for years. It just sticks to what is there and doesn't make it harder than it is. When you feel empty, even your problems look different. What initially looked like a flaw in you turns out to be just another learned pattern. Things that felt like a crisis are now simply changing. What used to feel like failure now feels like feedback. It's not that you don't care. It's because you don't consider the problem to be as solid as you once thought. Sunyata also frees you from shame and pride. Because there is no fixed self, there is nothing to protect or show. A big ego does not come from success. Failure does not destroy it. Being empty brings balance because it shows that the self is not a statue to be guarded, but a process to be observed. This does not mean that you have less interest in life. It helps you to be more flexible, more interesting, more caring. And why? Because you can listen when you don't cling to labels. You can change when you don't get stuck in who you are. You can move with reality when you don't try to hold on to it. When you feel empty, everything changes, including your relationships. Don't expect people to stay the same. You are no longer needed to play roles. You begin to love them not just as ideas, but as real people who live, breathe, and change. This love is more open, it is less heavy, because it doesn't hold on, it just is. The same applies to your inner life. You should no longer expect your mind to always be calm, clear, and intelligent. You haven't changed it. With this acceptance, clarity grows, not because you are in control, but because you know what is going on. This understanding is often strengthened through meditation. You sit down, you breathe deeply, you can see your thoughts rising and falling. There are feelings that come and go. Identities come together and fall apart. After a while, something becomes clear to you, not in your mind, but in your body. Nothing stays in your mind. Everything is in motion, and what observes this movement is not changed in any way. This observer is not a self. It is not a fixed I. It is awareness itself, which is open, spacious, and unbound. Even if it is only for a moment, awareness of this removes the need to give everything a heavy meaning. You do not become hollow and empty. You become empty in a way that liberates you, free from attachments, free from false reasons, and free from the stress that arises when you try to turn something fluid into something solid. Life does not cease to be important. It means that you should stop confusing what is important with what is permanent. Do not think that love is only important if it lasts forever. Stop thinking that peace is only important if it lasts a long time. Stop thinking that identity is only important if it remains the same. You understand that how you deal with each moment is more important than how tightly you hold on to it. Sunyata shows that more knowledge does not make things clearer. When you cling less to something, it becomes clearer. When you give up the need for things to be different now. When you don't fight when things come and go. Even if they are empty, your goals, dreams, and ideas change when you look at them. They are still important. They are still in motion. But you no longer base your value on what will happen. You stop judging your progress by how much you have earned. You begin to believe that the movement itself is enough, the offer, the action, or simply the presence. That doesn't mean you're silent. It helps you learn, because what you do now comes from understanding, not desire. The decisions you make are based on knowledge, not fear. Your words come from being free, not from wanting to protect yourself. Now that this silence continues, let go of the need to hold on. Don't feel the need to explain yourself. Feel free to let this moment take whatever form it wants. You can't hold on to anything. And when you let go, everything makes sense. Another layer of resistance begins to fall away, now that the emptiness is no longer perceived as nothingness, but as a vision, as the vast space in which clarity appears. Not the struggle against feelings or thoughts, but the struggle against silence itself. Because it is often a strange feeling that arises when distractions are gone and there is nothing left to hold on to or control. Don't be afraid. It's not exciting. It's just pain. The mind calls it boredom, but that label is not accurate. What we feel is the edge of real presence, the beginning of deeper seeing. Something begins to open up when you don't run away from it. People don't always see boredom for what it is. It's not that there is no excitement. It's the stress that arises when the mind has nothing new to think about, when there is no more fun, when it's hard to think. In this case, The normal pattern of chasing, solving, and avoiding is interrupted. In this silence, the mind begins to feel relaxed. It tries to grasp something, and when it can't think of anything, it classifies the time as boring. But this moment is not empty. It is full. It's just not full of things to do. Often, getting your head straight starts right here on the other side of restless silence. Because restlessness lies deep beneath the surface of boredom. And being nervous while avoiding things is bad. What are you avoiding? The attempt to avoid being. Being where you are, without a plan, noise, or a problem to solve. The mental dust begins to settle when you stop moving, but it swirls before it clears. That cloud is boredom, that in-between state. Not yet busy or calm, not sure what to do, and that's where most people go. They pick up the phone, they change tasks, they become annoying. Not because the moment hurts, but because it's new. Right now, it's not bad to be bored. It means that the mind has not yet learned to rest without being stimulated. For this reason, it is a very good teacher, because feeling uncomfortable is a sign to stay, to take a breath, to leave behind the story that nothing is happening, because what is really happening is that your inner world is coming to the surface. The Buddhist path doesn't exactly make boredom look cool, but you have to stick with it, because it's the lack of space that makes us bored. Clear seeing lies beyond space, but understanding cannot arise if the mind is constantly running away, and boredom is the way in. At this point, the mind begins to break its habit of being distracted. It's not about bringing things to a standstill. You have to encounter the stillness that is already there and understand that your discomfort is not a problem. It is a way in, a change of pace, a shift from looking outward to looking inward. Many people never reach this level because they don't want to go through the change. But if you sit for a while, long enough to feel the full range of boredom, the edges begin to fade. You begin to see the thoughts that bore you, the urges that make you want to move, the stories that say, "This isn't enough," and when they stop, something even quieter begins to speak. This is where clear thinking begins, not quite as stimulated as it could be, but in the next valley, in the area where nothing new comes in, where you just sit, alone. And this being reveals everything that the chaos had hidden. Boredom can also tell you what you want, not just for fun or food, but for a specific reason. To reassure yourself, to be different. As soon as you stop giving in to these urges, they come back. They try to make you give in. They will disappear if you stay and breathe through this surge, and the appearance is all that remains, not finished, calm and open. The more time you spend there, the less afraid you will be of that place. The more you feel at home. What was boring before now feels rich. What felt empty before becomes bright. The subtleties become more apparent. There are more sounds in your breath. There is a little less silence. During this shift, the mind learns a new kind of clarity. Not the clarity that solves problems, but the clarity that sees things. It's not a trick. It's not a quick fix. This is a reboot. Rewiring. The willingness to let go of the idea that every moment must be filled, that all the holes must be filled, that every second must teach, entertain, or accomplish something. When you're bored, you learn how to fill the gaps. How to make sure the gaps aren't empty spaces. They're places to breathe, places to heal, places to listen. When you learn to deal with boredom, you no longer need to constantly expect something from life. Your mind doesn't have to be doing something all the time. You begin to believe that just being there is enough. The fact that you are alive is already an experience worth having. Everything has changed. The way you perceive time has changed. You stop paying attention to the minutes and start living in them. The way you think about work has changed. You no longer need constant excitement, but pay more attention to fewer things. It even changes your creativity, because a mind that is not constantly fed begins to shine with its own light. Being bored can also show you how your mind works, how it reacts, its fears. And these tendencies become weaker when you observe them without feeding them. It becomes less painful to be bored. It's more like space. It's more like being calmly ready, a place from which true understanding can emerge. Your inner life also becomes stronger. This time, you don't run away from the pain. You're not addicted to thrills. You don't dull your mind with thoughts. You stay. And when you stay, your feelings are less likely to change. They become more sincere, easier to handle, because the mind doesn't exacerbate them with restlessness. This doesn't just happen when you meditate. Boredom can be dealt with in a number of ways. Slow down during a quiet day. These are all opportunities to reduce the need for something else, to get used to what is. And the more you do that, the more you will understand that boredom does not mean that life is boring. It means that your mind is getting rid of too much. As this silence grows stronger, you may notice that your mind wants to give it a name. It wants to figure it out. But you don't have to. Stay calm, feel, just pay attention to the silence as it grows. Feelings like, "This isn't helpful," should disappear. Let the urge to move disappear, because when you're bored, you have nothing else to do. There has always been clarity just below the noise. Another kind of clarity begins to emerge now that you have encountered silence without having to run away from it, and now that you have seen boredom not as nothingness, but as a first step into depth. The path to this is not only calmness, but also balance. Now that the mind is less active, its patterns become clearer. And there is a new task within these patterns: to have a habit of extremes, to be able to switch back and forth between too much and too little, in the middle between passion and avoidance, between too much thinking and switching off. The middle way is a Buddhist term for getting off this mental seesaw. It also gives you peace of mind and security in your thoughts. Extremes make us feel strong, and our minds love them. Rigid belief gives us a sense of security. Complete rejection is easy to achieve. To be fair, both are types of imbalance. When the mind falls into either extreme, it doesn't have to work hard to stay stable. Either it makes everything stronger, or it hides what it doesn't want to see. There is no way to get to the truth. One makes noise, the other makes you numb. Starting from this inner tug-of-war, the middle way of thinking begins by taking a step back. In a deep sense, it does not ask for neutrality. Instead, it asks for understanding. It understands that both overthinking and avoidance are wrong ways of looking at things. Too much thinking complicates things. Suppression takes away knowledge that could have led to understanding. Instead of avoiding thinking, the middle way does it better. It thinks when it needs to, and it lets it rest when it's not necessary. The first step on this path is to become aware of when a thought is no longer helpful. When the mind is stuck in loops, it is not thinking, it is just going around in circles. Going over the past over and over again is not the way to become clear. It is just fear trying to look like readiness. The opposite approach, not thinking about something, doesn't help either. Thoughts are buried when you push them away. They don't go away. They come back. They wait for things to calm down. When they do, they come back bigger and harder to catch. The middle way doesn't immediately eliminate or ignore problems. It looks around. Thinking stays with it long enough to find out where it comes from, but not so long that it gets caught up in it. That's fairness. That's what keeps mental loops from turning into emotional waves. That's what keeps thoughts from becoming an obsession. Thoughts are welcome, but they don't take control of your life. One way to determine if you're out of balance is to check your pace. Compulsive thoughts go around in circles. Thoughts that are oppressive remain stagnant. Thoughts that are balanced are alive. They move at the speed of being. They have a rhythm. They arise, are perceived, and pass or evolve naturally. The speed at which your mind works influences how you deal with feelings, make decisions, and keep your mind clear. The way you think is another sign that something is wrong. Is it loud? Too harsh? A circle? That's a clue. The voice of the middle way is often gentle. It doesn't sound critical but interested, not questioning but inquiring. Your goal is not to hide the truth. You want to make it real. This tone creates an inner space that is safe enough for the truth to come to light without pressure. Timing is also part of balanced thinking. You don't have to answer all your thoughts right away. Some facts need time to grow. That's okay with the middle way. It doesn't rush understanding. You don't have to come to a decision right away. It leaves the question open and waits for the answer to come when it's ready. This prevents your view from closing too early and allows a more comprehensive view to emerge. To think the middle way, you also need to be aware of extremes in your thinking. Stories that are all or nothing. Predictions of disaster. Complete opinions about yourself. These are warning signs. They indicate that the mind is not functioning properly. Complexity is recognized through balanced thinking. It sees the gray. It's not easy. It allows things to change. That didn't go well. What can I learn from this? Is an example of balanced thinking instead of, I always mess things up. It doesn't say this is hopeless, but this is difficult right now. The middle way does not free you from difficulties. It does not simply fall into them. In times when the mind is spiraling, it gives it a foundation. That changes everything. This way of thinking also helps when you disagree with someone. Instead of blaming someone or withdrawing completely, you create space for understanding. You don't ask who is right, but what is true. You listen to think, not just to respond. This opens up lines of communication where there used to be defensiveness. A pause emerges where there used to be pressure. The middle way can also help you reflect on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself because you have flaws, but you shouldn't pretend they aren't there either. Be honest with yourself and don't try to hurt or avoid yourself. From there, real growth is possible, because now your efforts are based on truth and no longer on shame. This balance is also important in spiritual practice. If the mind tries too hard to be still, meditation can turn into stress. It can also become lazy and use detachment as a reason to stop searching. The middle way shows that there is still real practice out there. It is sharp without being rigid. It makes you feel calm without being passive. It changes. It gets smarter. It comes back. This way of thinking does not make you unsure of what to do. You have to think about it. It makes you strong enough to wait when it is right and clear enough to act when it is necessary. It takes the excitement out of the extremes and brings it into the calmness of understanding. When you are calm, you can make better decisions. Your attention improves. Your heart softens. Your creativity also grows. Your thoughts are no longer suppressed by fear or inflated by fantasy. They are changed by being, by waiting, by having a mind that is open enough to let thoughts come and go without getting stuck in one place. Going down this path doesn't mean you'll never have problems. It means that your struggles no longer control you. The pendulum swings back and forth until you learn to recognize when it goes too far. Gently, several times, until balance is established as the new norm, not completely balanced. It's not a rigid symmetry, but a living center, a way of thinking that stays in place without clinging. So, let your thoughts have their say as you travel. Allow them to speak. Let them grow quieter. Don't chase them. Don't silence them. Meet them in the middle. Not too much, not too little, not too much to stay away. If you want to join me on this journey, please subscribe to the channel and tap the bell. That way, every time you come back, the journey can become even deeper, calmer, and clearer. Take it easy until we talk again, and rest well.